Well, apparently we've had a significantly less eventful morning than the morning show. Holy hell. Bert getting pulled over, getting out of it, and then outing the cop afterwards. Shameful. Slay getting his car stolen in seedy Brentwood, as we all know it to be. Sketchy neighborhoods around the Brentwood area. Don't leave your car unattended.
Yeah. RKW had story time. The story time of all story time with
What the hell is going on?
I mean, Bert this morning, good Lord. Very eventful Friday. And the NFL coaching cycle is spinning out of control.
Well, it's not spinning out of control. In fact, it's spinning into line. It's just there's some details as to how it's come about, how the picture is being filled out here that have some questionable elements to it. One job remaining. The New Orleans Saints still don't have a coach. Nobody wants to work for the Saints, it would seem. The Raiders are agreeing to a 3-year contract with 73-year-old Pete Carroll. That news announced this morning. I believe Adam Schefter first on it. And then this Liam Cohen stuff with the now Jags coach after he didn't want to be the Jags coach because Trent Baalke was still the Jags GM. Jags fired Trent Baalke because nobody wants to work with Trent Baalke. All of a sudden, Liam Cohen is ghosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's some reporting from Rick Stroud down in Tampa Bay that he had informed Tampa that he was dealing with a sick child, and that's why he was having trouble getting back to them, ghosting them, in essence, as to what was going on. Just kind of lightly mentioned that he was still considering the Jacksonville job, never signed his contract to return to the Buccaneers as the offensive coordinator. A massive, should we call it a plot twist? It seems a bit... Liam Cohen changes jobs like he's running from the law. Does he not? This man has been all over the place in the last 5 years of football.
Yeah, this will be
college to pro to college to pro.
Let's see. I mean, when's the last time he spent more than 2 seasons in one place? It was when he was with the Rams before he took the Kentucky job in 2021. Then he went back to the Rams for 2022, went back to Kentucky in 2023, and then went to Tampa in 2024, and he's about to be the head coach of the Jaguars in 2025. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs in 6 years for Liam Cohen.
That's what I'm saying. He's running from something, it would seem, or he's just a shameless ladder climber, which is fine. There are plenty of people who go about their job, their career aspirations that way.
Nothing shameless about it. He's been moving on up the whole way.
No, the way that he has got, you would not consider this particular situation that should come with some degree of shame.
Yeah, he probably could have handled this a little bit better.
What do you think his phone looked like yesterday when all of this is coming out? Because he previously removed himself from consideration from the Jags job, right? Agrees to a Buccaneers extension that would have made him the NFL's highest paid coordinator, Lucas. That's not inconsequential in all of this. They were offering him real money to come back and work with Baker Mayfield again. They had a career year with Baker and Mike Evans in Tampa. They made the playoffs. So in a 48-hour stretch that left his former team with the inability to contact him, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he reverses course after the Jags fire Trent Baalke and decides, yeah, you know what? If you let me pick my GM, I'll come hang out with the Jags and we'll save Trevor Lawrence. And honestly, they end up getting a solid coaching candidate for what their needs are, even though the Jags, again, process does not... The process does not indicate that they should be rewarded with one of the better coaching candidates, whether he ends up being a good head coach or not.
How does Trent Baalke feel today?
I don't know, man. He did a Zoom with his boss where his boss basically said, yeah, if the right guy comes around, I'd fire Trent. They're sitting next to each other on the Zoom.
You're retained. You probably know nobody in the NFL thinks you should be retained. It is being held as a massive criticism against your owner and your team that you are being retained as the general manager.
The only person in the league that didn't know this was Shad Khan because then he just lets him run the coaching search.
And then not only do you have Shad Khan in the same Zoom in a press conference saying, yeah, I'd consider firing Trent if that's what the head coach wanted and it was a credible suggestion, with Trent in the Zoom.
That's right.
And then that's exactly what happens.
Yep.
Coach says, oh, I'm not going to work here if this guy's, no, I'm good. Back to Tampa I go. Shad Khan recognizes that, fires Trent Baalke. Liam Cohen, come on back, and he takes the head coaching job because Baalke's not there. I can't imagine what that feels like.
This is from Adam Schefter of ESPN. As one person said about the 2-day saga that saw the Jags lose their GM, the Buccaneers lose their OC, and Cohen accept 2 jobs, tell me that this man should not have some degree of shame about accepting 2 jobs and then just bolting for the better one. One that made him the NFL's highest paid coordinator and another to become Jacksonville's head coach. I've never seen anything like it in my life. That's Adam Schefter of ESPN, who has covered many, many coaching searches across the entirety of the league. And this one is particularly interesting.
I feel like this is exactly how you would go about it if you were a coaching candidate in the NFL.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So don't give me the shameful.
Yeah, but I don't have shame.
Shameful actions by Liam Cohen.
I'm identifying with Liam Cohen 100%. Yeah, if better things came along, yeah, I would accept 2 jobs at once and then run away to the better one. Of course.
A lot of people would.
Of course. So he's a first-year offensive coordinator with Tampa. Pulled himself out of consideration for the Jags initially. Now he's going back, and the Titans will see Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence, twice a year. There is also this harebrained, I don't know, is it too extreme to call it harebrained what Orlovsky did on First Take yesterday?
Suggesting the Titans trade for Trevor Lawrence, and he did this before the Liam Cohen. At that point, Liam Cohen had stepped out of consideration for the Jags job when Orlovsky said that on ESPN.
Because Orlovsky is saying that the Titans should trade the number 1 overall pick for Trevor Lawrence. There's a couple. Let me say this first. Dan Orlovsky is a very bright football mind. I very much enjoy his analysis on NFL Live. I love what they've allowed him to do with the virtual reality stuff. I think Dan is doing it at a higher level than many people.
I criticize him.
I enjoy him on broadcast.
Just say what you want to say.
He's a former player. And those 2 things, the acumen that we're talking about to suggest a trade like that, I think are 2 different things. I think Dan's a little out of his depth on that particular part of the analysis, trading the number 1 overall pick straight up for Trevor Lawrence on a $55 million deal.
It's First Take, so I don't think it's that deep, right? Like that show just is what it is. So,
I don't know. I mean, there's some fair arguments that are made on First Take. I just don't think that was one of them. You know,
put it on the list of outrageous things that have been said on First Take. We kind of brought up this idea. Brainstorming about, okay, if the Titans were to look for a trade partner for Will Levis.
We didn't bring up Trevor Lawrence.
No. But I've brought up the idea of Liam Cohen when he was in Tampa. That feels like it would be less likely now to trade Levis within the division than it would to trade Levis to Tampa to play for Liam Cohen again, who he had success under at Kentucky in 2021, and compete for the backup position with Kyle Trask.
And my rebuttal to that was Liam Cohen may have already gotten everything he thinks he can get out of Will Levis. Maybe he's, good on the experiment.
Right. We have no earthly idea how Liam Cohen truly feels about Will Levis. No idea.
I am very curious to see what becomes of Trevor Lawrence now, because theoretically this would put him in the best position to succeed of any of the coaches that he's had, certainly not Uncle Herb. And then, Doug Peterson had a limited amount of success. They made the postseason, and then things tailed off fell off pretty dramatically from year over year.
3 head coaches in 4 years. Was drafted in 2021.
Yeah, but that's the Jags. I don't know. The Jags, that's who they are. Like, the fact that Doug Marrone lasted as long as he did with that Jags team is the anomaly, not the rule.
And people pointing out, too, Baker Mayfield about to be on his 8th offensive coordinator in 8 years.
That's an extreme example, but that's just what the NFL is. That's what makes the Josh McDaniels thing interesting to me in New England. Because a lot of people are kind of turning their noses up and being like, well, Tom Brady made Josh McDaniels. And I'm sure that there's some truth to that. Just as Tom Brady helped make Bill Belichick, even though Bill Belichick obviously has something to do with the success that the Patriots did. The person most responsible for that success over 2 decades was Tom Brady. What is the level of fear if you're a head coach that you're going to have success with an offensive coordinator and that offensive coordinator is just immediately going to get hired in the next cycle? Because Ben Johnson deciding, yay, you know what? I'm just going to go back to Detroit.
It doesn't really happen.
It almost never happens. Josh McDaniels is not getting another head coaching job. One would assume. It would be pretty beyond belief if Josh McDaniels got a third opportunity after being terrible at it.
Yeah, which is why if it works, it could be a really good situation for Mike Vrabel because he struggled with that here.
Because it just has to work enough, right? Like, they just have to be good enough that Josh McDaniels doesn't get real interest as a head coaching candidate again to be able to retain an offensive coordinator. That's why teams, it's a part of why teams hire these offensive-minded head coaches, because they don't want to lose coordinators year over year. And if you've got the guy, the head coach, also calling the plays, then you can kind of protect yourself against that, theoretically. I mean, when's the last time the Titans had a head coaching candidate or a coordinator hired away to be a head coach? It was 21, right?
Arthur Smith.
Coming off of the 20 season, so into the 20, that would have been January 2021.
Yeah,
when
it was the COVID year.
Went to the Falcons. So, it's been some time since the Titans have had anybody to consider in that kind of vein, but that's something that factored into the equation around a Brian Callahan, for example, whom you'll hear from later on in the show.
And then you got Pete Carroll. Back at it.
He's going to be 76 if he makes it to the end of the contract.
No, he'll be 74. At the end of the contract. I see what you're saying.
Contract. Well, then he'll be 77 if he makes it to the end of the contract because he's 73 right now.
He'll be 74 in September. Okay. Pretty much right around week 1, he'll be turning 74. He will be the oldest head coach in NFL history. Pete Carroll, officially the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.
All right, 615-737-1045. An interesting coaching cycle. Chips are falling, though it's late in the process. And I mean, what do you do if how is your what should I call it, Jay? Disheveled Saints fan friend that we often cite? He's the only Saints fan that I know.
Make it sound like he doesn't shower.
No, that's probably not the right descriptor. Sorry, Jack.
Distressed,
yeah. distraught.
I've
Saints
just texted him about it because I'm curious. Nobody seems to want to work for the Saints. They, I don't even know who their number one candidate is.
It was Aaron Glenn, and then he said, "Nah, I'm good."
I have no clue.
Imagine being like, "Nah, I'm good. I'll take the Jets job."
Yeah, no, that's a tough place to be.
Who should the Titans retain now that Mike Borgonzi is the general manager? They've talked about being more selective in free agency. Does that impact their retention plans? We'll talk about it next. Welcome back to the show on this Friday. Fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, 615-737-1045. How you get in there? Before we talk about players that we think the Titans should make an effort to retain, I do want to bring something up because Lucas lobbed an allegation, not just at me, but at Liam Cohen about ladder climbing and shameless behavior and all these different things. Jackson, what's Lucas wearing today?
I believe that would be a Titans radio pullover. Anything? Oh, and his resume is pulled up on the computer. What's he doing over there?
I should have known you guys would do this.
He's doing exactly what Liam Cohen, or he's trying to do. He's having less success, obviously, than Liam Cohen is having. But these are desperate measures now. He's trying to send not so subtle messages to the people at 460 Great Circle Road. Please, God, hire me. Get me out of here. Get me a better job. Get me away from these people is what he is trying to message, and also typing that directly in emails whilst wearing Titans radio gear.
I am a fool for not thinking that this would be the case when I walked out of the house in this. This is a very comfortable pullover, by the way, for what
convenient.
It's worth. Look,
it's
man.
so comfy.
Wait, what do you mean, look, man?
Look, man.
Look at him trying to get serious. Look, man, shut up.
I'm not going to shy away from the fact that it would obviously be an incredible opportunity, and I've appreciated the time that I've spent with Titans Radio. For me, it's the thing that I value more than anything else that I do, especially more than this. So yeah, I'm not going to shy away from that, but I appreciate every moment I've gotten to spend with Titans Radio and Mike Keith. And that would be an honor, but
now
I should have known you guys would do this.
Just known. You can beg. It's okay. We all understand. You don't have to. It's like you yelling at me in the first segment. Just criticize him already. Talking about Orlovsky. Don't give me don't give me all the fluff on the front end.
The begging.
We know what you're trying to do.
The begging is to get me away from this, like to get me out of this.
Who's that? Shad Khan?
That is Shad Khan.
I mean, come on, get me out of here, man. Get me out of here.
I've been trying to for years, unsuccessfully.
I know,
he wants to leave, and I want him gone. And yet,
how are we not managing this?
Again, it's a level of incompetence that is, pretty on brand with the show.
Where's that come from?
I don't know. Maybe that's maybe the content of his emails, like John Gruden, is what's preventing him from getting another job. Perhaps we should orchestrate some level of investigation into what Lucas has been emailing people from corporate accounts.
Now, let me make it clear: there is no replacing Mike Keith. There is replacing Buck Rising. It'd be pretty easy to replace Buck, but there is no replacing Mike Keith.
Oh, goodness. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. Titans have, do you know how many unrestricted free agents?
How many?
20. How many do you think that this team absolutely has to keep? Because the list is a lot of people that were involved in the product on the field this year, and the product on the field was 3-14, as we well know. Now, interesting to hear Mike Borgonzi talk about the current Titans roster at his introductory press conference, because while these deals are getting ready to expire once the new league year begins and free agency will kick up in earnest, for the meantime, they have opportunities to consider what they have in-house, what is potentially getting ready to walk, and what they might want to keep. This was Mike Borgonzi on, what was that, Wednesday?
Yeah, so I knew a lot of these players coming out of college when I studied them coming out for the draft. Of course, I watched a lot of them here this season before I prepped for the interview. There's some talent on this roster, but we're a 3-win football team right now. So that's not good enough, and we're going to have to look, everywhere to improve it. Whether that's upgrading starters or upgrading depth. When I'll get to sit down more here with the coaches and get a better understanding of all the players. But there's some talent on this roster. We're going to have to upgrade some positions, though.
That's being very diplomatic about it, and we'll hear from Mike Borgonzi again about free agency and how that might factor in. Do you have the list in front of you? Because I do. Because I can name you 4 players that I might be willing to go above and beyond to keep.
4 players that are currently under contract?
Unrestricted free agents.
Okay.
So while their contracts are still valid, that contract expires in 2 months from now, essentially when the new league year begins. I would be interested in, again, depending on the price, I would be very interested in keeping Nick Westbrook-Akina. He's an unrestricted free agent.
Yes.
You
just tell me keep or don't keep.
Of the 20? You want to do this with all of them?
We'll be selective.
Okay.
You already said NWI.
Depending on the price. I don't know what, 9 touchdowns is going to do for the value. I don't think a team that's trying to maximize the value on their contracts is going to overpay for NWI, given that it's basically an entirely new regime that, didn't want to give him snaps at the start of the season and then I think actively hurt themselves because of it.
Quandre Diggs.
31 years old, going to be 32 years old. Team does have a need at safety.
And he was playing well when he went down.
He's playing well enough to be a starter on a 3-14 football team.
Defensive backfield was playing well.
I would prefer to draft a safety.
So you say don't keep Quandre Diggs?
No.
Sebastian Joseph Day.
I would, actually. He's coming up on, I think this is either his 7th or 8th year in the league. He's not he's not Jeff or Sweat, right? He's not one of these players that has a superstar quality to them, potentially in the case of Sweat. Jeff certainly can turn it on in spurts. I think he's a quality piece in that rotation, and I think that they would benefit from keeping him. Also, I think he's a good locker room guy. This is a player that's been a team captain in previous stops. I think that you're looking for as many different people to kind of help the influx of youth that you're going to have on this roster. I think he's a quality human being, and I think he's a quality player.
Morgan Cox.
Yes.
until the wheels
until he
fall
calls
off.
it a career. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Dylan Radins.
No. Get a new right guard.
Okay.
He listen, to his credit, he played the best football of his Titans career.
He did.
It's not good enough. They need to reset the board on the right side.
Okay, then keeping it there, Daniel Brunskill.
I think he wanted out last year.
Why do you say that? Is that just a guess?
No. The trajectory of the football team was not something that was appealing. I think the situation after the coaching change was also of interest. And I think, he's got I don't think he's married yet.
I'm confused. Do you know he wanted out, or are you guessing?
Talked to some people who told me that he might not be interested in returning, and that he hoped that he was a cat candidate. That's essentially what I was told.
All right. The janitor in the building told you he wanted out. Nick Vanette.
What's it cost?
Not much.
I'd probably be good with a Vanette. They need the third blocking tight end. Wiley and Chig. Chig got better as a blocker, to his credit. I think you did more with Chig than you have at any other point in his tenure here. The tight end situation is kind of an unknown.
Jack Gibbons.
What is their linebacker core currently under contract? Kenneth Murray, Cedric Gray, James Williams, because Jerome Baker's an expiring deal.
Jerome Baker's an expiring deal. Luke Gifford's an expiring deal. I mean, a lot of these guys.
It depends on how you feel about Cedric Gray and James Williams. I don't trust them as much as I trust Jack Gibbons, but Jack Gibbons obviously has deficiencies. I don't think that's an expensive deal. They have $50 million cap space. I would consider a 1-year deal for Jack Gibbons.
Keep Dr. Gibby. Now, this is an interesting one. Nick Folk.
He wants to keep kicking, is what he told people on Locker Room Cleanout Day. He's 40 years old. He's coming off an injury that cost him, what was it, the final 3 or the final 2 games of the season? How many did the Narv dog have to pull? Well, Narvison got cut
Matthew Wright is the one who came in.
And Wright had 2 games. I think Narvison had 1. So Folk at 40 years old dealing with a groin injury and an abdominal situation missed 3 games at the end of the year. You bring in a younger one, I would at least bring him back for camp. Like let it be a competition, yeah? We could agree on that. I mean, he's been arguably the most consistent thing that they have going.
He was nothing but good. So nothing but good this past year.
I'm not opposed to moving on from Nick Folk because, I don't think that the age and the injury situation are going to get better anytime soon. He's 40. So I would like another kicker in camp. There will be another kicker in camp. I would at least like Folk back in camp.
By the way, Gibbons is an exclusive rights free agent.
Yeah, let's just do unrestricted guys.
Right. So that means the Titans could make him an offer at the 3-year veteran minimum salary.
Yeah.
And he has to take it or leave it. Okay. Daryl Worley, cornerback.
Played more safety than I did corner this year. I guess he played nickel and safety.
Gave him some good snaps.
He's got versatility. I do think that they need to draft a safety. We haven't really talked about safety needs. Like, legitimately, they've never. Obviously, it's tough to replace Kevin Byard. I would be more inclined to keep Worley. He can play multiple positions, and he didn't have great moments, but he had good enough moments as a depth piece. Because that's the thing; it's not just starters we're talking about. This team has 4 years needed depth.
Yeah, he's 29. He will be 30 in February. And the other aspect of this we're not talking about is the locker room impact. And that sounds cliche and, it's the culture thing that you always talk about. But that was something Mike Borgonzi emphasized a ton when he talked about players that were retained from when the Chiefs were terrible, 2-14, that led them to having the number 1 overall pick where they took Eric Fisher. Borgonzi was there for that. And he brought up names like Anthony Fasano, who Titans fans know.
Titans legend.
That were critical.
How many people in that press conference or listening to that press conference screamed out in their cars, Titans legend?
Titans legend. That were holdovers from those tough years before having the number 1 overall pick, but were critical in that transition. So who are those guys in this locker room?
I think Sebastian Joseph Day is definitely one of those guys.
Is Tyler Boyd one of those guys with his relationship with Brian Callahan? He is an unrestricted free agent at wide receiver, and he is,
He's definitely not he's not a detriment to the locker room by any stretch of the imagination. But I think if you're probably picking between a Tyler Boyd and an NWI.
Yeah, he's 30. He'll be 30 at the start of the season as well.
I'd be inclined to try and find a more. You need a better slot player, right? He didn't give you enough, and I know that the quarterback is the axis of evil in this particular situation. Well, we're talking about the Titans' inability to kind of run the offense.
Well, the thing we talked about a lot yesterday was the Titans' inability to have the easy pass, right? And we were talking about the amount of blame that is divvied up in Brian Callahan not putting Will Levis in a good enough position to have an easy out to be able to progress the ball down the field. Will Levis not being able to take advantage of those. I mean, who is the kind of player that benefits from that? The security blanket for a quarterback. That's Tyler Boyd.
Well, in this case, it was, I think, the tight ends and I think the running back. Like, I think Spears, when he was available, was that, but the availability obviously was hit or miss.
It's not
again, this is Pro Football Focus, so it's not the end-all, be-all, but Tyler Boyd graded out as the 88th of 98 qualified wide receivers.
Okay. I just don't think with what the Titans... There were a lot of things they weren't good at on offense. Mm-hmm. But I don't think He was
targeted 56 times, which was 73rd out of 98 qualified receivers. I feel like you have to be able to find a player that just has more juice, that's more cost-effective at this point in time.
But again, how many of Tyler Boyd's targets in Cincinnati would have come within 10 to 15 yards from the line of scrimmage?
I don't have the answer to that question.
Right? Probably, I would wager most.
Well,
right? He's not the primary downfield threat in Cincinnati. T. Higgins,
but the way
Jamar
that
Chase
they deploy these guys, like I understand what you're getting at, but I would want more specific data on that before we just kind of assume.
Sure, but I'm saying I think if Brian Callahan was able to run this offense the way he would want to run this offense, Tyler Boyd would have been utilized more.
Well, I think the slot position would have been utilized more, whether or not Tyler Boyd can give you what you're looking for out of that slot position. Listen, I get it. It's almost like a bridge player for an offense, right? Coach comes over looking for somebody who can help implement the scheme. You get the slot receiver. It doesn't work out the way that you want it to. I just don't. I mean, is he such a plus on a variety of different fronts that he has to be retained? I would answer no.
No.
Well, isn't that what you're asking me?
No, I don't think we're playing the game of have to keep and have to let go.
I mean, I thought that was the game.
Yeah, you're saying keep or don't keep. You don't have to keep any of these guys.
I'm good on Tyler Boyd.
Jerome Baker.
No.
Mason Rudolph.
I mean, they're going to sign a quarterback in free agency. Does it have to be that one? Does it need to be that one? I think he's a completely fine presence. I think he's a calming presence. they showed that he can be at least functional to an extent in the system. I'm not opposed. I would like an upgrade at the backup quarterback position, especially if you're going to draft one, but we don't know if they're going to draft one or not. We'll know whether fair or true or false, we will know whether the Titans are going to draft a quarterback after free agency, based on the extent, the lengths that they go to address the quarterback position of what's available.
Did we know the Falcons were going to draft a quarterback when they brought in Kirk Cousins?
Which is
I'd say false. I don't think that definitively tells us anything. Does it make it less likely that they go QB at number one? Maybe, but I mean, how much do we talk about trying to toe that line of veteran bridge quarterback and young quarterback to develop and not throw them into the fire day one, especially when the pressure is going to be on after a 3-14 season?
I want them to get the quarterback when the situation is as good as humanly possible to support the quarterback.
Yeah,
and I don't think that situation is currently at hand.
Right, or you get the quarterback. It doesn't mean you have to put him in that situation immediately. You let him develop.
Yeah, but if you draft a quarterback, there's going to be some expectation that he plays.
If the veteran quarterback that's supposed to bridge the gap doesn't play well.
What was your argument the entire time about teams picking at the top of the draft? How often do they pass on a quarterback with the number one overall pick?
Not very often.
It's a very rare thing. We don't know if there's been any mandate handed down from ownership about, hey, we got the number one overall pick. Let's go get a quarterback, right? That's the missing component to this. If I was them, I would not, free agency wouldn't completely remove me from the quarterback draft market, but I certainly wouldn't take one at the number one overall pick. I would try and find, I think if they end up taking a quarterback with the number one overall pick, I'm not going to argue that it's the worst case scenario, but I don't think it's the best case scenario, because that means that they either didn't get sufficient offers for teams offering them draft capital that would make it worth it to move out of that number one overall pick, which means that there would still be considerable needs on the roster to address, and you only have so many opportunities to do so with 8 picks, including that number one overall pick. I just don't know that they need more of a support system in place for a young developmental quarterback. Both of those players are young developmental quarterbacks.
Again, I just don't understand why the logic has to be if you draft a quarterback number one, you play him day one. Like, I get that's what most teams do, but we've seen many teams fail at
precedent.
that.
But,
right.
We've seen many teams fail at that because teams do that all the time.
Yes, because they throw these quarterbacks in when they are simply not ready.
So what are you assuming about this situation that's going to make it different?
The Titans need a stabilizing force at quarterback, right? Desperately.
They need a stabilizing force.
How likely are you to get that with a rookie?
Stabilizing force at safety. They need a stabilizing force.
But I don't think you're very likely to get that at quarterback with a rookie starting on day one.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah. I'm saying that the league,
right, but
on
you're
a
saying
regular
that would
basis,
eliminate them from drafting a quarterback, and I disagree.
What would eliminate them from drafting a quarterback?
The need to have a stabilizing force at quarterback, and it not being a rookie.
I'm not saying that would eliminate them from drafting a quarterback. I'm saying that should at least make them reconsider what their options are if they are going to draft a quarterback, and if that quarterback is worth the number one overall pick.
Again, it'll just come down to their evaluation. I mean,
for sure.
They could have offers, but if they love Cam Ward, then they can draft Cam Ward, even with offers on the table. But we know they also prioritize draft capital, something they have not had a ton of in the last couple of years.
What they said, their words, and I wish they wouldn't use the G word, generational, but whatever, that they would not pass on a generational type of player with a number one overall pick if they were to sit there and pick at number one. We don't know whether they consider these quarterbacks, and it's really about Cam Ward, right?
What do you mean?
Like, if we're talking about quarterbacks that are most likely to be the number one overall pick, it's about Cam Ward.
Right, if you're just putting the teams aside,
yeah,
Cam Ward is the number one quarterback prospect.
Right. So whether or not, like Shedeur, it's fair to expect that Shedeur would also be a first-round pick, but there's going to be some variance there. And again, the Bo Nix proposition, the Michael Penix proposition, like these examples exist, but again, they are not what most often happens. There is precedent for teams drafting a player with the number one overall pick and getting them out there as fast as humanly possible. You remember how mad you were at Urban Meyer for wasting everybody's time with Trevor Lawrence and Gardner Minshew splitting reps? So it can't be both things, right? more often than not, a team at the bottom of the heap that desperately needs a quarterback and drafts and does go the route of drafting a quarterback number 1 overall is going to play that quarterback.
More often than not, yes. But I feel like the last couple of years, it has been such an extreme watching these quarterbacks not just struggle, but flail in those early moments in their rookie season, with the exception of a Jaden Daniels. And I know, some rookie quarterbacks played well this year. Bo Nix played well. Caleb Williams got better as the season went on.
Sure. And listen, I'm with you. If they draft a quarterback in the first round, I would want that player to sit, whether he's number 1 overall or 20, whatever. Whatever that situation is, I want the player to sit. I'm just saying that rarely happens.
It does. It rarely happens.
615-737-1045 is how you get in there. Coming up next, you have a stat of the day?
I do. Big game happening on the Plains on Saturday.
I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Big game on Saturday. Top 10 matchup at Auburn. Number 1 Auburn hosting number 6 Tennessee. This is one of the one of those unstoppable force meets immovable object situations.
That's a very
words.
Very
what? Okay, you can't think of words right now.
no.
It's okay.
It's just a
Auburn.
very high praise for Tennessee right now.
Okay.
Who is the unstoppable force? That's Auburn, right?
Yes.
What makes Tennessee an immovable object right now?
Being the number 2 team in the country in defensive efficiency. Auburn being the number 1 team in the country in offensive efficiency.
Okay.
Auburn, by the way, offensive efficiency calculated by measuring the number of points a team scores per 100 possessions. Obviously, defensive efficiency is the inverse of that. The number of points a team allows per 100 possessions. Tennessee allows 0.861 points per 100 possessions. That is number 2 in the country behind only Houston. Auburn scores 1.22 points per 100 possessions. That is number 1 in the country. So the best defense in the SEC meets the best offense in the SEC and in the country. The big factor here is Jani Broome, who is probably a favorite to win Player of the Year. He has been dealing with an ankle injury. He's missed a few games at this point. Bruce Pearl said yesterday that Broome, quote, moved around a little in practice, but he was not a full go. He is questionable for tomorrow. Bruce Pearl saying he's very confident Jani Broome will get back into action next week. So his status very much up in the air. And you're talking about a guy who's averaging a double-double this year, almost 18 points per game and 10.7 rebounds per game. He has not played since January 11th. So it will have been exactly 2 weeks tomorrow. That is, by the way, a 7:30 tip-off at Auburn. You can hear the Vol Network call right here on The Zone beginning at 7. So Tennessee, 4-2 in SEC play. Auburn undefeated. They're 5-0 in league play. Big game for the conference regular season title race, which I imagine is going to come down to the wire all year long, unless Auburn just separates and continues to sort of create this gap between them and the rest of the league. But that's going to be really hard to do in this year's SEC. Obviously, another X factor here is Tennessee going on the road. Neville Arena, when Auburn is good, is buzzing. It's small. It's intimate. They're on top of you. And Tennessee, both of their losses this year have come on the road at Florida and at Vanderbilt in front of, I don't know if you could call Vanderbilt a hostile environment. It was a very energetic environment.
It was more hostile than it's been in years past.
Absolutely.
Or at least that's the way that it, obviously I wasn't there. That's the way that it translated on TV.
For sure. Maybe a 50-50-ish crowd, but definitely a lot of buzz, a lot of energy in that building. So, yeah, this hopefully will be a good game. I tend to lean, when you're talking about the whole unstoppable force and movable object thing, I tend to lean towards the unstoppable force.
Agreed, especially
when the immovable object is going on the road.
Yeah.
But defense travels. Tennessee is going to have to find some offense from players other than Chaz Lanier, which they've been able to do to their credit. I mean, Tennessee.
Well, they've had to after Lanier, went through that stretch that he did. And I know he got right against Vanderbilt, but
no, he did. He went through a brutal cold streak before the Vandy game. He scored, I think it was 25 total points in the 3 games before the Vandy game.
And to your point, the defense allows them to get away with it. Not get away with it, but the defense gives them the opportunity to kind of survive those moments. Because when you're only what are they giving up right now? 58.6 points per game, I think, is what the Tennessee defense is allowing from opponents. Auburn is currently the 10th scoring offense in the country, 85.7 points per game. So when you're playing that sound on the defensive end, it's going to give you the opportunity to survive those shooting slumps because you can just drag your opponents down to the mud, which is what Rick Barnes has been able to successfully coach teams to throughout the course of his career.
Tennessee is the number 3 team in the country in scoring defense at 58.6 points per game, like you said. Now, the question is, what happens when the unstoppable force is without its most unstoppable force? And that's Jani Broome.
Yeah, because, guys like Dylan Cardwell have been getting minutes. Chaney Johnson, Jaheim Hudson have been kind of filling into the lineup. That's who they've tried to at least supplement Broome with. But the fact that it's taken 3 players occupying those minutes.
No, but they've been scoring at a high rate. Auburn was able to hang 88 on Mississippi State last week, 70 on Georgia last Saturday.
They're talented and they've got depth. And that, I think, has shown through, to your point.
So hopefully this will be a good game. You could see it getting out of hand in favor of Auburn if Tennessee does hit a cold streak offensively and the crowd really gets into it. But Janai Broome and his availability is a major, major X factor here. I want to see Tennessee find some sort of depth at the point guard position because that was, for me, the biggest turning point in the Vanderbilt game that Tennessee lost was Zakai Ziegler getting into early foul trouble, Rick Barnes sitting him for the last 7 minutes of the first half, and the Vols getting outscored 20-9 in those 7 minutes. They only scored 1 field goal and committed 3 turnovers in that time. They just kind of looked out of rhythm offensively. And they do look that way when Zakai Ziegler's not running the show. They don't have a Dalton Connect this year to just clear everybody out and take over the game. Chaz Lanier's replaced a lot of that scoring production, but he's not the same kind of player that Dalton Connect is. He's arguably a better shooter, but not a better overall athlete and doesn't run the offense and take over the offense in the way that Dalton Connect could. So they got to keep Zakai Ziegler out of foul trouble, and that's just going to be the case for the rest of the season. But this is a big game. Big game. Tennessee looking for a big road win. They haven't had a marquee road win yet in the SEC, still early on, only 6 games so far played in the conference slate. But it's always fun when Tennessee and Bruce Pearl and Auburn get together. So we'll see what happens. Rick Barnes, for all the success he's had against Kentucky, he's not had a ton of success against Bruce Pearl and Auburn. So we'll see what happens.
F&M Bank Chat commenting on this as well. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch is where you can get involved there. Rico on Twitter says UT has to score 80 to win. He says that won't happen. I mean, they're capable of it. They're certainly capable, but things have to be going. They have to play a pretty turnover-free game, first and foremost. They have to be sound as far as the offensive rebounding goes, which is something to keep in mind. So they have to play a complete game, and that was always going to be the case going on the road in the SEC, but specifically against this Auburn team, if you're going to give yourself the best opportunity to succeed, you can't. You got to stay out of foul trouble, to Lucas's point. You got to be sound rebounding. You can't turn the ball over.
The defense is what's going to keep Tennessee in this game. I don't know that Tennessee's not the type of team that you have to score 80. Tennessee rarely gets into a game where you have to score 80.
Is this not the game that you would want to see them, if they're going to do it, like they would have to rise to a different level than we have seen them do?
Yeah, they have not scored 80 points in an SEC game yet this season. The last time they scored 80 was against MTSU a couple days before Christmas. So we'll see if Tennessee can hang in defensively, if Chaz Lanier can kind of continue to regain the momentum. Tennessee bounced back really nicely against Mississippi State. Lanier was fantastic. It seemed like the cold streak ended in that game. He got red hot from 3. So should be a really fun environment. It would certainly help Tennessee if Auburn decided to wait a few more days to bring Janai Broome back into the lineup. Quickly, Vanderbilt hosting Kentucky tomorrow at Memorial Gym. That's a 1:30 tip-off. Vandy got routed, gave up over 100 against Alabama, fell victim to Mark Sears and the Tide in Tuscaloosa.
We asked Mark Byington, what was that on Monday? What the hell do you do about Mark Sears? Sears is like, I don't. It's been keeping me up. So clearly, he's not they're not the first team to be victimized by Alabama and Mark Sears specifically, but Vanderbilt not quite being up to that specific moment, but it could be a quality win against Kentucky if they're able to do it at home. All right, very good. Mike Borgonzi spoke about Brian Callahan as the current Titans head coach. What are his thoughts on the current Titans head coach, and what have their initial conversations been like? You'll find out coming up next.
11 o'clock, good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. In NFL news this morning, Adam Schefter is reporting that former Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll has agreed to a deal with the Raiders to be the next head coach in Vegas. Carroll has been out of coaching since the 2023 season, and he will be the oldest head coach in NFL history. On his Raiders debut, he will be 74. The only head coaching opening in the AFC South has been filled in dramatic fashion. The Jacksonville Jaguars are hiring Bucs offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. Just 2 days ago, Cohen had pulled himself from consideration and agreed to an extension with Tampa, but went back to Jacksonville after the Jags fired GM Trent Baalke. And the Nashville Predators are red hot, winning a fifth straight game, 6-5 over the Sharks on the road Thursday. Philip Forsberg with 2 goals. He extends his goal streak to 7 games, matching a franchise record that he set last season. Tennessee football got a transfer portal edition this morning. Notre Dame interior offensive lineman Sam Pendleton commits to the Vols. Pendleton started 7 games for Notre Dame this season. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome back to the show. Welcome in on this Friday. If you're just now joining us, Lucas Jackson and me until 1. So you got a new GM. Now you start to fill out the rest of your scouting staff. Your coaching staff continuing to be evaluated at this point in time. By the way, Colt Anderson not officially fired, even though John Fassel, or Fossil, is it Fossil or Fassel? Have we decided? I keep wanting to say Fassel because of the way that it's spelled.
It's Fossil.
But I know that's not right. Fossil. As the special teams coordinator. So things continuing to be evaluated at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. And one of those things that may not be, under a high level of evaluation or maybe a high level of scrutiny right now, but the coaching staff in general and specific to Brian Callahan. Now, you're going to hear from Brian Callahan a little later in the show on a couple of different topics specific to quarterback, but Mike Borgonzi coming in as a general manager that did not hire Brian Callahan, but Chad Brinker being retained as the president of football operations when the team did hire Brian Callahan. They're moving forward with him as the coach. And, I know we made some jokes to the effect of, well, that Patriots game certainly be interesting, and we know that the red button has been pressed.
You did not sound like you were joking. Jokes? Are you sure about that?
I mean, ask her, I'm making jokes.
You sounded very serious when you said that the Patriots game is now the most significant game on the Titans schedule this year, which I think is a little bit of an overreaction.
It is for him. If they, assuming that they don't play games of postseason consequence, right? I'm saying that assuming that the Titans are not going to the playoffs in 2025.
I don't think he's viewing it that way. I would certainly hope not.
He shouldn't view it that way. Everybody else is going to view it that way. That's going to be the narrative when the Patriots come to town. We understand that.
I get why, but I think it's dumb.
Sure. So for Brian Callahan, in the same way that everybody in the front office and everybody on the roster is being evaluated on a daily basis, so too is the coach. And I wanted to ask Mike Borgonzi what his initial conversations with Brian Callahan were when the press conference was given on Wednesday. This is the new Titans GM.
They've been great. We've had mutual friends over the years and coworkers. And, of course, we competed against each other over the years when he was in Denver and then, of course, his last stop in Cincinnati. But, yeah, we've had great talks, during the interview process. We had great talks, and we're going to continue those talks, and we're going to head down to these all-star games here coming up. But just getting a feel for the entire roster, that's really the first thing that we have to figure out. And then, discussing the strengths and weaknesses, and then I'll meet with his staff as well.
So that's Mike Borgonzi speaking on Wednesday. And then there's this clip from Tuesday, our interview with Dane Brugler of The Athletic, talking at length about how essential it is for Callahan and the new Titans general manager to be on the same page from the jump.
Yeah, well, and you hit the nail on the head. There's just so many the cap space, and how you're managing the different contracts, and there's just so many elements to this. The biggest thing, you look at the most successful organizations, is just the teams that are all on the same page. There's no infighting. There's no, everybody has a clear vision of the way you want to build it. So that's why we see a lot of teams kind of, they don't want, you try to line it up so the GM and a head coach are on the same timeline. And obviously the Titans doing it a little bit differently. So you just, hope that GM head coach relationship gets off to a great start and they have a similar vision with how they want to build this. The delegation of power needs to be understood from the start in terms of who has final control over the 53. How are we going to delegate, in the war room, what's it going to look like when we build this board and who's going to make the final decision? And just, you don't want any type of infighting from that perspective. And that's something that's so important to organizational success, obviously. So, we'll see, coming into, because Mike's coming from, in the Chiefs, where Andy Reid has Veach is obviously a GM there, but Andy Reid has a huge say in what goes on there. And so how will that work here with the coaching staff? It'll be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Dane Brugler of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone, talking a little draft. I didn't know if there was a follow-up as to why you included me in that. But yes, that's Dane Brugler. So, yeah, I mean, Dane saying the most obvious part of that, which is you don't want infighting, right? You want a situation that is not akin to, I wouldn't say that there was infighting outright between Vrabel and Carthon. The infighting was more between Vrabel and the business people who put Rand Carthon in place against Mike Vrabel's wishes, for lack of a better term.
Now, I'll tell you what you want. You don't want to hear it. You want collaboration.
You want people that work together well. You want a clear and obvious understanding of how these things go. I'd rather hear synergy. I'd rather hear
we can find another word if we like.
Alignment. Yeah, I don't want to. But
that's what it is.
I don't want to hear that word.
That's just what it is.
I will use every other word but that word.
How about that we just we compromise? Oh, there's another C word.
That's the one I gave you yesterday. Thanks for paying attention.
And we just say you want good collaboration. You want good collaboration.
I want people to understand what their jobs are, and I want people to do their jobs effectively. And I want people to delegate effectively, and I want this thing to function at a high level if I'm a Titans fan, because that's the thing that it has not done for basically 3 years now. And predating that, to be honest with you, going back to, I don't know how much blame to put on John during the COVID thing, because everybody was up against it, and he just fared particularly poorly. Mm-hmm. But then everything that came after the fact, after you got through the pandemic scouting and all these different kind of things, the virtual meetings and whatnot, he never rebounded that way.
It spiraled.
Yeah, so let's just say 21 on. This thing has not functioned at a high level.
Nah, you can't say 21 on when Isaiah Wilson. I get COVID, but other teams had good drafts in the COVID draft, and Isaiah Wilson was part of the COVID draft. Like, we can't omit that as part of the beginning of the spiral of John Robinson in this roster.
No, and that's a fair thing to point out by you, because how many of those 2020 picks are left?
On the Titans roster? None, right?
0.
Yeah.
Nick Westbrook-Akina is the only player that came into this roster as a rookie during the COVID season that still remains on the roster.
Yeah.
And we'll see for how much longer, given that he is an unrestricted free agent. So, to your point, it hasn't functioned at a high level since the pandemic. And the pandemic is coming up on 5 years ago, which is a crazy thing to think about. Now, they feel like they've got the right people in place. They feel like they've got the right order of things. They feel like everybody understands their role, at least internally, whether we do externally or not.
The right delegation of duties.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'm all for that.
Reminds you a bit of where college football is going now, with teams bringing in general managers, because the job of head coach in college football is simply too much to put on one singular person.
Yeah, I mean, especially when the operation is so large, because coaching staffs have never been bigger, right? Scouting staffs have never been bigger. The level of involvement, the level of detail as far as strength and conditioning, recovery and wellness, all these different things, all that are on the football side of the ledger, there's never been more roles, more responsibility, because you want these things to operate as high of a level as humanly possible. And you want as many qualified people doing these jobs that can help you. Now, you don't want to, hire people just for the sake of hiring people. You want to hire quality people that know how to get these respective jobs done, and they feel like they've done that this time around. But they also felt like they did that the first 3 times around, and it hadn't gone well. So now we wait and see. But what we do know about this specific dynamic, Borgonzi and Callahan, is Callahan reports to Borgonzi. Borgonzi oversees the coaching staff. Like, that is under his jurisdiction, as the roles and responsibilities have been laid out as we understand them.
But does that mean Callahan doesn't have control of his coaching staff?
I don't think that's what it means, but I think that because the head coach reports to Borgonzi, that at very least Borgonzi has input on what's going on. Not, is this another version of final say is what you're asking? Between Callahan and Borgonzi on the coaching staff? Again, to their point about the draft room, right? Like, if Callahan, I'll just use the phrase that they keep using. If Callahan decides that he wants X special teams coordinator and Borgonzi disagrees, is somebody going to run up there and slap Callahan's hand from making the call or sending a text or something to that effect?
No, they're going to collaborate on it.
Well, they're going to work together. I am curious to see what Mike Borgonzi's evaluation of Brian Callahan is. One question that I wanted to ask, but we did not get the opportunity to ask in the 10 a.m. session of Chad Brinker was there any consideration of moving on from Brian Callahan? And I suppose that could have been asked, and maybe it's soft by me, but with families in attendance and things like that, Brian Callahan and his wife in attendance, I didn't necessarily think that was the place to ask that question. I would have liked to gotten that out in the 10 a.m. session, but we ran out of time. Because there was things put out on the internet as to who wanted whom and who didn't want whom specific to the coaching staff. None of that's ever been verified, but it is, and I don't know that question would even be answered, right? Because they've brought Callahan back. They're going to ride with him, and to say anything to the effect of, yeah, we definitely looked at coaching staff options in the offseason. Obviously, that wouldn't benefit anybody right now. But if Amy Adams Strunk is of the understanding, which they're saying she is, even though she hasn't said it herself and hasn't been asked the question to answer herself about, hey, do you understand what they're telling you about patience over panic and that this is a slow burn? Does that also apply to Brian Callahan, or does the clock, basically, does the clock restart on Brian Callahan because you got a new GM?
And it seems like you're pivoting in your approach to free agency when they talk about being more conservative in free agency on building out via the draft and acquiring 30 draft picks, setting a bar of 30 draft picks in the next 3 years.
Because I'm sure them telling us that is not something that they didn't tell her.
Right. If that's trickling down to your pivot in your approach, then I imagine, yes, it would trickle down into the evaluation of the head coach.
But we don't know that. That's a fair assumption by you. I don't think it's a reach by any stretch of the imagination. But again, all we have to go off of is this team's precedent. And the precedent that they've set is that patience over panic has not really been a thing. They make these decisions. They've cycled through, in Chad Brinker's words, 3 fired Titans dignitaries in the last 3 years. And Brian Callahan feels in the most tenuous position of the 3 dignitaries that we're now left to work with, Brinker, Borgonzi, and Callahan. Whether or not that ends up bearing itself out, we have no idea, because we have to await the on-field performance. We have to see which kind of players that Brian Callahan is going to get to work with. We talked about the idea of, does drafting a rookie quarterback actually buy Brian Callahan more time? I think some people would think yes. My inclination would be like, I don't necessarily think so, because now you've got your quarterback, and that would speed up any clock that's on you about, all right, we got you a quarterback now that you say that you can work with after you couldn't work with the last one. What's the deal? What's the holdup? Let's see it.
I expect patience to be part of the adjustment here. If that's going to impact how they go about free agency, not making big swing after big swing, to do everything you can to try to be competitive and try to formulate competitiveness via that route, building a team through the draft, in turn, requires patience. So I imagine that would be a part of the adjustment here, given that there has not been success with the lack of patience in the last 3 years.
Okay, because I feel the opposite. I do not have an expectation of patience because that's not what they've shown. Would you like patience? Of course.
But what they've shown has led to 9 wins in 2 years. So I imagine it's why they would move away from what has happened in the last 3 years. Everybody in that building, I'm sure, would tell you 3 GMs in just over 2 years is not conducive to success.
Sure, Lucas, but if they improve this year and they win 5 games, is that going to necessarily lend itself to patience? We don't have the answer to that question. Because the thing that we know most definitively about why people get fired around here is what? The record.
Yeah.
The record of the team is the thing that gets the most people fired. And so if the record of the team is substandard again, even if it's an improvement upon being the worst team in the league, that does not guarantee patience. 615-737-1045. We'll take your phone calls coming up next. Also, Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio will join us. We'll hear if Lucas has a sales pitch for Mac on how to be his running mate. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Coach Mack will be upon us here in just a second, but we'll take some phone calls in the meantime. 615-737-1045. Mark is up next. Hey, Mark.
Thanks, guys. I would say I just want to talk about Jackson Dart, man. Look, we might have something with this guy as a trade back. We need a quarterback. That's no surprise. But if we could get a quarterback in free agency that could train him up, let him sit for a year or two. Hopefully it's 2 years, to be honest. So, that means we've progressed in the playoffs and actually made a run. But this guy has amazing passing yards. He was a starter all 4 years to come from, I think, the Trojans. Man, passing program, what do y'all think about that?
What do we think about Jackson Dart? There's some level. Again, it depends on what they think of the first-round quarterback or quarterbacks, plural, assuming that the two of them would go in the first round. It's an option. Listen, you have any number of options. The Titans have the most leverage in the draft right now because they own the number one overall pick. And as Coach Mack has told us many times, and as I'm sure he'll tell us again, there are two different drafts between the quarterback draft and the rest of it.
He's going to have a chance to help himself next week at the Senior Bowl.
Jackson Dart.
Which Coach Mack will be a part of.
There's going to be a lot of interesting prospects at the Senior Bowl this year, including some underclassmen. Coach Mack joins us now, presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, online at tworiversford.com. Mack, you excited for Senior Bowl?
Sure. I mean, I've been to it ever since I've been in the league, which is 1986, so I've got to like it somehow, right?
Sure. I would say it's not just the oysters that keeps Coach Mack coming back to Mobile, Alabama on a regular basis. Mack, before we talk about, where you are in your draft prep and the importance of Senior Bowl specifically for this new scouting staff, I know that you are probably just getting to know Mike Borgonzi, or maybe you've had some crossover in years past with Mike Borgonzi. What do you know about the new Titans general manager?
I haven't had any crossover. I met him, up there at the facility after the press conference. I do know a lot of people that are there with the Chiefs, and of course I've visited with them. A lot of coaches, and they say nothing but really, really good things. I mean, he's the one thing they do say is that he is very, very thorough. He's very organized, and he's very detailed in what he does. I get nothing but great reports from the people that I've talked to up there, just about how he is on a day-to-day basis to work with.
Coach, what kind of goes into that initial process of a head coach and a new general manager getting on the same page? Just right out of the gates into the offseason, getting ready for the NFL draft, everything that's coming up in the next few weeks. What are those first few steps like if you're Brian Callahan getting to know Mike Borgonzi and vice versa?
Well, what Mike is going to familiarize himself with, and he's got a head coach that's already been there for a season and a scouting staff right now that's been there for a season. And of course, Chad Brinker's there that he can lean on because you want to learn your roster. Now, I'm sure that Mike has done a very detailed look at the roster, but you sit down first and talk about the roster and what you have, what you need, and not only for the immediate, but how everything projects out into the future. And then, Mike Borgonzi has been doing this for a lot of years. He's very, very familiar with all of these players that are coming out in this draft. But your initial question is you sit down and you go over your roster thoroughly and take an in-depth dive on all the players.
And they do have some interesting players to kind of go over, Mac, right? I mean, it's not like the roster is completely without talent. Obviously, things didn't go to plan at 3-14, but there are some interesting pieces here for Mike Borgonzi to continue to consider and evaluate, and for Brian Callahan to see how much more he can get out of them than he did the year previous. They also have a pretty interesting list of unrestricted free agents, and I know we'll have plenty of time to talk about that between now and then. That specific part of the roster audit, for lack of a better term, though, how much can it inform specifically the areas of need that they have moving forward into free agency?
Well, that's where you start. That's where you start digging, first of all. And that's why these initial meetings, and these meetings will continue. Look, they're all going together to both of these all-star games that we're getting ready to have. And that's what the discussions will be. I mean, and that's the priority right now is your roster, because that's the priority of your football team, because you've got a good majority of your coaching staff in place. The scouting staff, I'm sure Mike will have his ideas on the people he wants to bring in, but you don't do that immediately, because in all of this work in the scouting world is done a year ahead of time. They're always working 1 year ahead with everything that's going on, but they will go over, as I said, in very fine detail and ask questions, and everybody will have an opinion as to the players, how much they think they can still contribute, what their contribution was, and then, how we can fill this in. And it's not going to be an immediate process, but that's what you start with. You start with sitting down. All the places that I've ever gone new is you sit down first and you go over the current roster, and then you see how you have to improve it and how you can more quickly improve it in critical spots.
Brian Callahan in the locker room cleanout day press conference with us, Mac, talked about how excited he was to be able to attend these all-star games, these pro days, because last year, the emphasis was obviously on building out the coaching staff. He and Rand Carthon at the time, they hung back. They were recruiting essentially various coaches to try and get them here as they filled that out. Now he gets to, as he said, get back to his roots in the scouting process. It sounds like he's really excited about that. Just, I can't imagine how much bigger of an advantage that is this year versus last year.
Well, Buck, you're exactly right. That's a huge advantage for a coach. I mean, going through a season, especially as the first-time head coach, I've done it, and I'd been in the league a few years before I got my first head job, is the fact that, everything else now kind of works itself out in a linear fashion. And you're 100% right. Last year when you get hired immediately, now you're tasked with, not only getting used to a new environment, but you're tasked with putting together an entire coaching staff. So that takes a lot of time. And now, with the linear progression of what the league is, it's talent evaluation time. And, of course, having worked there in Cincinnati, the coaches were very, very intricately involved there with the Cincinnati franchise in scouting. I mean, probably much more than a lot of coaches are around the league. So he absolutely knows what the process is, and I can understand wanting to get back to that.
Mac, for people who may not know and maybe don't necessarily have the answer to this outright, but why is that the case for Cincinnati versus other clubs?
Just the way they do things. Every club's different. Every club is different, and it's the way everybody wants to look. I've been doing this long enough, and I've been to league meetings, and the different personalities of the different owners and the way that's how they run it. That's how they run it. That's how they've always run it, and that's how they're going to continue to run it. So, I mean, that's every club is a little bit different, and there's especially early on with what's been going on down there at Cincinnati. It was they didn't have a real large scouting staff, and the coaches were very, very much involved.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can see all the work that they're doing at TennesseeTitans.com. Of course, Senior Bowl on the horizon. The Titans radio contingent will be down there breaking it down. His visits presented by Two Rivers Ford.
Coach Mike Borgonzi talked this week about the importance of the head-up aspect of the quarterback position, evaluating that processing ability. I'm just curious, at least for you, do you think you find out more about the head-up aspect of a quarterback watching tape or sitting down with the quarterback, running him through different situations? In what setting do you think you figure out more about that as a QB prospect?
You got to get to know them. You got to be with them. I mean, you got to be with them on the boards. You got to be with them in a meeting room. And I'm talking about the pre-draft process. I mean, I went through it. I went through it with Jake Plummer, went through it with Jared Goff. I mean, you've got to get to know the person, and you got to understand who they are. Get there. You're talking about the neck up knowledge is what you're talking about, as how they process the game, how far along they are on it, how they see the game, what makes them tick. But you can't do that unless you sit down with them, and then you dig into all the different avenues that you have to be able to find out, truly how they are, how they react under pressure, how can they react to certain situations, because that position on an NFL football team is the most critical position. It's the most demanding position, and so you've got to be able to discern, at some point in their career, how are they going to be able to handle all of it. But you've got to do it. You've got to do it in person, Lucas. I mean, that's a huge part of it. You can get a feel off of the tape but you've got to sit down with the player.
Certainly Washington and their evaluation of Jaden Daniels, Mac, has to be pleased. I mean, I'm sure they couldn't even imagine winning 14 games with a rookie quarterback and being in the NFC Championship game for the first time in, I believe it's 33 years. The last time that they won a Super Bowl was the last time that they were in the NFC Championship game. People of a certain age have talked about, the passion of Washington football fans, and that's never really been evident to me because they haven't won a Super Bowl in my lifetime, and you're seeing that come back to the fore. What most excites you about this particular matchup that Washington has with Philadelphia, given that these teams have obviously seen each other twice already this year?
Well, first of all, the Washington franchise, when I first got in the league, I mean, that was one of the main people, they and San Francisco, that, the Bears were always, in those early years, dealing with during the playoffs. Joe Gibbs and that group, and then, what was going on with Bill Walsh. I mean, that's who we were competing against as you got to the upper tier of what the NFC was doing. And then Dallas came along and jumped up into that tier. So, look, they've got a very storied history there. And it goes back a long, long way. I mean, I coached a lot of games there in RFK Stadium and know the passion of what that is. They've got to be tremendously excited. And the thing that impresses me, Buck, about Jaden Daniels is that he has put the big spotlight on himself, and clearly they've done a big job of being able to recapture the momentum there with that fan base, because of their success. That's what winning does for you. But the quarterback does not seem to be bothered by any of it at all. I mean, and that's a rare blend of composure in a young player, plus the fact that he's delivered in some big-time situations for them. And we saw it up close and personal. I mean, the guy is a difference maker, but the thing that impresses me more so than just his athletic skills, which is pretty easy to discern when you start looking at it, is how composed he still is at this point, this deep into the playoffs, his first season in the league.
Coach, the Chiefs and the Bills playing in Kansas City, it feels like everybody's expecting a classic, right? A repeat of that game a couple of years ago that went to overtime with the two quarterbacks dueling it out. But I'm wondering more about these two defenses. Maybe you could argue Baltimore should have given the ball more to Derrick Henry, some of the ways they went about that game offensively. But Buffalo and the way that they stepped up against that Baltimore offense, and the way the Chiefs defense has just been a catalyst for this team throughout the course of the last 2 years, really. What defense do you think is playing better right now going into this game, and what's the matchup that excites you the most about Bills Chiefs?
Well, I mean, look, both defenses have taken a back seat to their offenses. First of all, just in public opinion, and rightfully so, because I mean, both of these quarterbacks are premier players in this league. That's what draws the most attention. But I think that the Kansas City, last year Kansas City won the Super Bowl with Steve Spagnuolo's defense. I mean, and Spags is a dude that's been at it a long time. I know him very, very well. I mean, he knows how to get the best out of what he's got, and they're very underrated defensively. Baltimore to me has always been a defense that has always been there. And I mean, you can go and you can look when you're scouting or you're looking at drafts and you start looking at the defensive players and you can say, well, that's a Ravens type player because they've got big physical dudes. They've normally always had dudes at the second level as linebackers that can run. But until somebody proves, and that somebody now is going to be Baltimore, that they can be able to beat the combination of Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid, you got to go with the Chiefs.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio with us on 104.5 The Zone. Mac, appreciate the insights as always, and enjoy the football this weekend.
Guys, my pleasure. Talk to you. See you.
That's the main man, Mac. I know he said Baltimore a couple of times there. I assume he meant Buffalo, obviously.
Right. That's what people expect, right? Just an absolute classic between Chiefs and Bills.
Well, I mean, the last time the two of them were in the AFC Championship game was the COVID AFC Championship game, right? Where they're just going back and forth the entire time. It was an electric game. That's just not who these two teams are right now. But so, I mean, it doesn't mean that it can't be a classic. It's just, it may not look like the last time that those two teams faced off in this particular setting. I don't know, man. I'm more excited about Commanders Eagles.
It is so enticing to lean Commanders in this game. Like, just what it has got to happen at some point, right? A rookie quarterback to take a team all the way to the Super Bowl.
No, it's Vic Fangio's defense is so much better than the unit that was being coached by, was it Sean Desai last year was the defensive coordinator of the Eagles, even though I think they took him out for a moment and then Matt Patricia had some level of involvement, or was it Matt Patricia? I can't remember exactly. Either way, Vic Fangio has these players operating at a significantly higher level. They've got two rookie quarterbacks that are both in the running for rookie defensive player of the year. They've got a defensive line unit. I mean, turns out just drafting players off the best Georgia defenses that we've seen, arguably some of the best defenses college football has ever seen. Turns out that works pretty well. Jalen Carter working pretty well. Nolan Smith playing at a high level. Even what's the significantly bigger nose tackle from Georgia?
Jalen Carter.
No, the other one. The giant one. Like Jalen Carter is obviously a large human being, but I'm blanking on the other one that they drafted. I want to say the year before they drafted Jalen Carter. Either way, they've got a lot of good young players.
Oh, Jordan Davis.
Jordan Davis. Yeah. They've got a lot of good Georgia players. Turns out that works. This defense operating at a much higher level from a coverage standpoint, from a pass rush standpoint, and Washington dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. The rookie quarterback has not been bothered to date.
Totally unbothered. He's been the best quarterback in the postseason, right?
Wow.
I mean, his numbers, no turnovers. He's been incredibly efficient. He's completing 70% of his passes
it's crazy
in the postseason.
It's crazy
His
stuff.
average yards per carry, the way he picks his spots to run the football, bail them out of tough situations. I mean, truly, I think he's been the best quarterback in the NFL playoffs.
You're talking about a 3-time Super Bowl champion. You're talking about Josh Allen, who's a bit of a unicorn unto himself, and Jalen Hurts, who has been to Super Bowls. And, been to a Super Bowl, right?
A Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And the NFL honors finalists came out, and you look at, the offensive rookie of the year candidates. Obviously, we know Jaden Daniels will win, but alongside Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., and it just is more and more inexcusable in my head how LSU went 8-4 with that team last year. 8-4. I mean, Tennessee fans thought it was bad that Butch went 8-4 with that Dobbs and Jalen Reeves-Maybin and Alvin Kamara football team.
LSU fans have to be sick to their stomach.
Oh, my goodness. This is that times 100.
How is Brian Kelly still employed?
Unbelievable. Josh Allen has lost 3 times to Pat Mahomes in the playoffs. This is year 7 of Josh Allen. Growing up a Colts fan, you remember Peyton Manning and running up against Tom Brady and the Patriots. Peyton lost 2 times.
When do you think I moved to Indiana?
You claim every team in Indiana, so why not the NFL franchise? Notre Dame, IU, Evansville, throw the Colts in there. Peyton lost twice to Brady before finally getting over that hump and winning the Super Bowl. Peyton won the Super Bowl in year 7. Allen is in year 7. But he's lost to Mahomes 3 times in the playoffs.
I'm trying to think if I ever watched a Peyton Manning Colts game.
No, see, now he's overcompensating, Jackson. He's getting defensive. He doesn't want people to think he's a Colts fan, even though he was a diehard Colts fan.
No, Buck is a Colts fan, Zach.
Just quit while you're ahead.
Wait,
what did Zach think he was talking about, Zach?
But you talk about...
Yeah, you are a Colts fan. Andrew Luck over there.
I don't like
the resemblance is obviously uncanny, even though my hairline is holding up better than the current Isn't he the general manager of Stanford right
Yes,
now?
he is.
Yes, talk about your night job that way.
It's hard to ignore. I think people overblow Lamar can't win in the playoffs. And that's his legacy thing. Like, Lamar's not even 30 yet, right? He's just so many more years. But it's hard to ignore it if Josh Allen loses for a 4th time to Mahomes.
That's kind of the logic that I'm approaching this, because you're saying, like, eventually a rookie quarterback can take a team to the Super Bowl. Eventually, Josh Allen's got to be able to get one over Mahomes, right? Like in the biggest spot. Burrow did it once, and he may never do it again or something like that. But I don't know. In the same way that you're talking about Jaden Daniels, I feel that way about Josh Allen, because Josh Allen was the better quarterback this year
than Mahomes.
Than Pat.
Oh, yeah.
Even if he has the superstar quality that none of us can quantify, and he's just going to get it done in the biggest spots, and maybe he gets a call here or there, even though the Patrick Mahomes is denying these things at a podium, which is a bit comical. But I am curious to see what happens in this conference championship weekend. I am more excited about the Commanders-Eagles game, honestly, than I am Bills-Chiefs round 2 this year. But they'll both be good. I hope they're both good.
You can hear them both right here on The Zone.
How about that? Do I have things to give away?
You do. You have 2 tickets to see Styx and Kevin Cronin at First Bank Amphitheater on August the 4th.
How about that? All you have to do is give us your moment of positivity. 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. 615-737-1045, the number. If you want the opportunity to win what, Jackson? If you give us your Friday Fire, your moment of positivity, the thing that made you feel good this week. It can be sports related, but it doesn't have to be. It can be the fact that the Titans have a new GM. New things. Feels like Christmas a little bit. Free agency, the draft, kind of similar. Could be the fact that you're into the most exciting part of the Titan season, which has lately been the offseason where you get new personnel and things like that. It could just be generally something that happened to you personally, professionally, or otherwise. What's your feel good for the opportunity to win what?
2 tickets to see Styx and Kevin Cronin at First Bank Amphitheater on August 4th.
615-737-1045. Lucas, you can start.
The Nashville Predators are red hot.
Yes.
5 straight wins, back-to-back wins against the San Jose Sharks, down 5-1 with 7 minutes to go and change in the second period. Preds had already pulled Juuse Saros, who was not playing well, and stormed back with 7 different goal scorers to win 7-5 at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday. Turn around, fly to the West Coast for a late puck drop against San Jose last night, win 6-5. Philip Forsberg, 2 goals, and he has extended his goal streak to 7 games, which matches the franchise record that he set last season. Preds are turning this thing around. The question is, will it be too late? We saw a version of this last year. The Preds were the hottest team in the NHL. They got into the postseason. They couldn't get past the first round in Vancouver. They'll try to continue it tomorrow. They're on the road, headed north to Anaheim, or will stay west before they head north to Vancouver next Wednesday, and then to Buffalo, and then to Pittsburgh. So a long road trip to come here to try to keep this streak alive. They're still second to last in the Central. There's a lot of work to be done. The Blackhawks are the only team worse than the Preds in the Central Division still, despite 5 straight wins. That's just how bad the Preds have been since the start of the season. But they're red hot. Philip Forsberg is playing well. They're getting balance across the lineup. And the Nashville Predators, no one wants to play them at the moment.
How about the Preds? 5 in a row. Late night game last night. I did not stay up.
Got to get some better goaltending, though. Giving up 10 goals in the last 2 games and have won anyway.
Jackson?
You're not going to go, bud?
I'm still looking for mine. I'm still.
All right, I'll go ahead and go. I thought this was a really cool connection between the 2 head coaches two of the head coaches hired in the NFL this season. Aaron Glenn was the Jets' 12th overall pick in 1994. Who was the head coach of the Jets that season?
In 1994.
Were you alive in 1994?
It was a year before I was alive.
It was Pete Carroll. It was Pete Carroll's first head coaching job in the NFL. So both 2 head coaches hired this week with an interesting connection. That's my Friday Fire.
Yeah, that's pretty good. People are asking in the chat if I can name one Styx song. See, Lucas and Jackson had to tell me what the Styx songs are. I just don't know bands. But now I know. Renegade. How about that?
You'll claim to be a 71-year-old in a 38-year-old's body, or however old you are, and then turn around and be like,
38?
Yeah, aren't you 39, 30, 40, 41?
So mean what you just did.
And then turn around and say, oh, these dusty old rock bands. What do I care about these dusty old rock bands? You don't get to play both sides.
It's the band of your youth.
You do all the
band
time.
of your youth.
The band of my youth. When was Styx popular? When did Renegade first come out? It's got to be Am I going too far to say 70s? Probably
78.
Not 78.
Renegade, yeah.
78.
They've been
Neither of you get to be upset at me.
73 at least.
Neither of you get to be upset at me for not being able to name a Styx song.
Half the music I listen to is from the 70s.
Ironically enough, me too.
Just make it Pete Carroll, man.
No, I've got one.
Okay.
So, by the way, you can win Styx tickets if you give us your Friday Fire. Did you see the latest reporting on Jeremiah Smith? Jeremiah Smith is getting NIL offers plus transfer portal offers after the college football playoff title win. So we know that Ohio State spent $20 million ballpark to assemble their roster. Do you know what Pete Nakos of On3 Sports is reporting? Jeremiah Smith is being offered to enter the transfer portal.
What?
$4.5 million.
For next season?
For next season. Carnell Tate has been offered $1 million.
Yeah, here we go.
To enter the transfer portal. Jeremiah Smith, $4.5 million. If the Vols can get him, I'm for it. I love that this is getting ready to turn into a bidding war. Because now, this is the thing I think Jerry Jones wishes he could do. If Jerry Jones could just spend all the money that he wanted, the Cowboys would win the Super Bowl every year, but there's a salary cap. The idea of football without a salary cap, which is what college football has become, I know there's, some level of restraint that these programs are supposed to operate with, but it doesn't sound like they're going to be restraining themselves very much.
I mean,
let's go.
You love it because you're not a college football fan.
Yeah, I don't care.
I don't love it because the thing that's damaged the most is National Signing Day. I mean, National Signing Day used to be this celebration of this is our team. We are learning what our team is going to look like 4 years from now. And now you have no idea. Tennessee was very much in the recruitment of Carnell Tate. They went down to the wire with it. He ended up going to Ohio State. But it's just unsustainable, man. It cannot go on like this. It just can't. But I imagine Tennessee will definitely would love to have a hand in the Carnell Tate sweepstakes.
Yeah, Lucas very much criticizing the transfer portal, while if Tennessee got either of those players, he would be jumping up and down a child.
I'm not saying you shouldn't take advantage of it. My goodness, you'd be a fool not to. Tennessee just got Sam Pendleton, a Notre Dame offensive lineman, because now Notre Dame and Ohio State players have until the end of this week, until today or tomorrow, I believe, to enter the portal.
I think it's so funny that this is one of the reasons that Lucas feels like he gets to be the arbiter of fandom, but just because everybody else doesn't skip school for National Signing Day does not make them less of a fan than you.
When did I say that less of a fan than me? You are not a college football fan, correct?
Not in the truest sense.
Right. So, people used to get really excited about National Signing Day. That doesn't happen anymore. And I think the portal is a major byproduct.
No, I take that back because I have converted as enjoying the college football product more than I enjoy the NFL product anymore. And maybe that's because I don't get to watch other NFL football teams on Sunday.
No, from an entertainment.
Because Saturdays I just get to sit back and actually watch. Like Saturdays I get to be a fan.
But you don't have an allegiance. Like you don't have an allegiance.
I root for Notre Dame.
Yeah, okay.
615-737-1045. The number. Steven has a Friday Fire.
Hello. How
Hello.
are y'all?
Great.
So my Friday Fire is today is my last day of my old job, and I start as a nurse on Monday.
Well, congratulations to you.
Congratulations.
New beginnings. We love to see it. See, that's all it has to be. Just something to put a smile on your face, make you feel good on this Friday. A little Friday Fire.
Steven's going to Sticks. He had by far the best submission.
See, I'm not the only one who doesn't know who the hell Sticks is.
It was a narrow race for the win.
Right down to the wire.
Congratulations to Steven. All right, coming up next, we are going to get to a bit of a nonsensical trade suggestion that Dan Orlovsky made on national television for the Titans and the number one overall pick. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. In NFL news this morning, Adam Schefter is reporting that former Seahawks coach Pete Carroll has agreed to a deal with the Raiders to be the next head coach in Vegas. Carroll's been out of coaching since the 2023 season, and he will, come week one, be the oldest head coach in NFL history at the age of 74. The only head coaching opening in the AFC South has been filled in dramatic fashion. The Jacksonville Jaguars are hiring Bucs OC Liam Cohen just 2 days after Cohen pulled himself from consideration for the job and agreed to an extension with Tampa. He goes back to Jacksonville after the Jags fired GM Trent Baalke. College hoops this weekend. Number 6 Tennessee travels to top-ranked Auburn on Saturday. College game day will be on hand. 7:30, the tip-off on the Plains. Vol Network coverage on the Zone starts at 7. Auburn star Janai Broome reportedly a game-time decision for this one. Vanderbilt hosts number 9 Kentucky tomorrow afternoon. 1:30, the tip-off, and Belmont on the road at 3 p.m. against Murray State. Conference championship weekend in the NFL. Jaden Daniels looks to become the first rookie quarterback in NFL history to win a Super Bowl. He tries to continue that effort as the Commanders visit the Eagles in the NFC title game. Kickoff at 2 Sunday in Philly. And in the AFC, Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes face off as the Bills visit the top-seeded Chiefs. You can hear both here on the Zone, courtesy of Westwood One. Coverage starts at 1 o'clock. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on this Friday. Thanks for jumping in. We're happy to have you. So, lying season is upon us. It's been upon us for some time. We are going to have all manner of ridiculous trade options floated out there into the universe, and we'll just have to kind of eat it until such time as we get to the end of April and we finally see who the Tennessee Titans are going to draft, either first overall or whether they'll trade back or all these other things that are possible when you have the number 1 overall pick. Now, ESPN's First Take, renowned for strong opinions, one would say. Some reasonable, some very much not. An unreasonable one was offered by Dan Orlovsky of ESPN yesterday, the former NFL quarterback who does great work breaking down games, but not necessarily on this front, had a theory as to whom the Titans should trade the number 1 overall pick for.
I have the solution.
Okay.
If I were the Titans, I would call the Jacksonville Jaguars and try to trade for Trevor Lawrence. And if I was Trevor Lawrence, I would want the absolute heck out of Jacksonville.
I don't have no problem with that.
I would want the absolute heck out of the mess that is the
my
Jacksonville
challenge
Jaguars
to you, though,
right
Dan,
now.
here's my problem with that, Dan. Be reasonable. I'm going to trade my quarterback within the division.
If you're Jacksonville, first of all, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I am spurring this. Like, if I want out of Jacksonville. And if you're Tennessee, realistically, we're sitting here and we're trying to get all this rebuild, and I would be someone to tell you, I think Tennessee's got a decent football roster. Better than the first pick worthy type roster. Shador, and I haven't studied Shador and Cam well enough to make a definitive statement on where exactly I think they might be or whatnot. And Travis Hunter special. You don't matter in that conference unless you get a quarterback. As special as Travis Hunter is,
You don't matter in the sport.
matter.
You don't matter in the sport.
So, and you got to rebuild Trevor Lawrence's mindset and his psyche and his confidence. But if I'm Tennessee and I'm looking at it all, I'm calling Jacksonville and saying, okay, because you don't know what's going on in Jacksonville. It's a mess right now.
Can't.
Okay, now I believe this was pre-Liam Cohen circumstances, yeah?
Yes. This was definitely because the Cohen stuff really broke last night.
Yeah.
And he said this on First Take, I believe, yesterday.
Okay, so there's a million reasons why this will not happen. One, division rivals are not going to trade, much less quarterbacks. So there's number 1. Number 2, what is the new mantra of the Titans front office?
Patience.
Well, draft, develop, and retain. So this would be a player that they did not draft, that they would still have to develop, but it sounds like, almost a different version of the rewiring of the brain conversation when you're talking about rebuilding the player's mindset, mentality, and confidence. Just went through a season like that. No thank you. And it's the number 1 overall pick. Now, why would Trevor Lawrence not be worth the number 1 overall pick now when he was a former number 1 overall pick? Well, he's underachieved, I think, by a significant margin. He has 1 postseason appearance and 1 postseason win to his name, which he can thank the forever cratering Los Angeles Chargers for, because that was one of the most lopsided. I mean, the first half of that game was a disaster.
It was a blowout
for the Jags.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, things went the way that it did, and then it was the Chargers' turn to implode. He's on a mega deal, which you only have a limited amount of cap space, and you have a million more needs. So it's not going to happen for all of those reasons. It is not a realistic proposition to even put out there for all of those reasons. But I would take Trevor Lawrence for the second. You know what his cap hit is next year? Again, this would not happen.
$17 million.
$17 million.
Yeah, it goes up to 24 in 26, 35 in 2027, 47 in 2028, 78 and a half in 2029.
Yeah, but they have an out before it goes up to 78.
There is an out before the 2029 season.
Where there's no guaranteed money. No, there is a zero dead cap.
No dead cap, yeah.
Before it balloons up to 78.
Right.
It won't happen because they're division rivals and because it's a quarterback. And if Jacksonville was willing to pay him, I know Trent Baalke's gone, but if Shad Khan was willing to pay him, I'm assuming Shad Khan is not willing to trade him.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that is part of the intrigue for Liam Cohen as well in taking that job.
Yeah, that's what they said about Will Levis and Brian Callahan, and you rolled your eyes at that.
Please don't compare Will Levis to Trevor Lawrence. Let's not do that.
I would not do that, but people say things all the time.
I understand. I know, but it is so different when they paid Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence still has that talent of the number 1 overall pick, and they've seen a sample size of success with Trevor Lawrence. Has he underperformed to the contract? Oh, yeah, 100%.
And he's coming off injury, right? But, I mean, he had a shoulder injury, and then the concussion from Azeez Al-Shaair ended his season.
Yeah, he had the concussion is what ended the season, but he had shoulder surgery as well after he was ruled out for the rest of the season. But it would work, and it would completely contradict what they're saying, right? The patience over panic, draft, develop, and retain, 30 draft picks in 30 years. Like, if they trade out of the number 1 overall pick, it will primarily, we expect, be for draft capital.
It would. Again, this is not a viable trade. But the idea that Trevor Lawrence is just something that you can toss to the side, again, it's not worth the number 1 overall pick, even if this is a down quarterback draft, but I would absolutely consider it for the second round pick. The contract is manageable. Those cap hits that you just laid out, I know there's guaranteed money associated with that contract that you wouldn't want to take on, but the cap hits that you've just laid out are hugely cost effective. 17, 24, and 35? Quarterbacks are making $55 million a year, $60 million a year. God knows what Sam Darnold's going to make. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is lost by any stretch of the imagination. I just think he's gone to a terrible franchise. And that say if you're going to do the reclamation project thing with Geno Smith, with Sam Darnold, won a second-round pick, won a first-round pick. You've got other examples of these things. Baker Mayfield, a number 1 overall pick. Why can't it be done with Trevor Lawrence? Why is it so abhorrent? Is it just because of the idea of a number 1 overall pick being traded for him?
Oh, no, I'm not scoffing at the idea of Trevor Lawrence.
But I'm not asking you. I'm asking Titans fans. Because Titans fans revolted at just the mere idea, right?
Yeah.
So why is this one? Where do you get off after the level of quarterback play that you've had in the last couple of years? Come on.
Well, okay, but can't you say the same thing about Sam Darnold?
Yes, but this is a much higher level player than Sam Darnold.
Yes,
was.
it is. But like same principle. You know, look what you had at quarterback the last year.
Sam Darnold's going to cost more. This one's already done a deal.
I understand. I'm saying Sam Darnold will be a massive upgrade over what you had at quarterback last year.
Oh, sure.
And I've suggested that, you have said to me, don't use that as a reason on why to get a quarterback.
He's going to be more expensive than a player. The only reason I'm considering this is because this player has done a deal.
No, it's not going to happen for all the reasons that we've listed. But I agree with you that, after seeing what Darnold and Baker have done, the idea of scoffing that at Trevor Lawrence being able to get a second wind in his career with the talent profile, the success that we've seen him have, yeah, no. Trevor Lawrence has had far more success in that season where Jacksonville won the playoff game than Darnold had at any point before this year with the Vikings. And he still has more playoff wins than Sam Darnold.
The other part of this is Will Levis. Would there be any consideration whatsoever for Liam Cohen to include Trevor Lawrence in a deal that would involve Will Levis? Again, this trade is not going to happen.
Yeah, we're playing fantasy football here.
That's fine. That's what people are getting ready to do for the next 4 months. Why can't we do it a little bit? Because this one's actually interesting. Because I was honestly shocked by the reaction from Titans fans. Again, I get it's the number 1 overall pick, and you don't want to trade that for Trevor Lawrence. And you've seen Trevor Lawrence up close and personal, even though he's gotten the better view a handful of times here in the last couple of years. Basically, since he's been in the league, he's gotten the better view a handful of times. There was such a staunch, hell no, Trevor Lawrence sucks reaction after we've just spent so much time talking about the Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfields of the world that I just couldn't wrap my head around why the hell Titans fans were so just like rejecting an organ type of stuff with Trevor Lawrence. It didn't make any sense to me.
No, I'm with you on that. I mean, I feel similarly to Sam Darnold. Titans fans having like a physical reaction to the idea of Sam Darnold being the quarterback here next year, as if that wouldn't be a massive upgrade. So, no, I agree with you. But this is going to happen, right? So we've seen Dak Prescott, FanDuel fake trade graphic put together where the Titans get Dak Prescott and nothing else and send the Cowboys the number 1 overall pick and multiple other picks. Okay. And now we've got a Trevor
People
Lawrence
must think
trade
so
suggestion.
little of the Titans. Like, honestly.
No, this is just what we do. It's the number 1 overall pick. You have the number 1 overall pick. You're going to be talked about.
You would have to be an idiot to put together that FanDuel graphic. You would have to think that the franchise, even willing to entertain a world where the franchise would do that deal. You would have to think so little of that.
Has nothing to do with which franchise has the number 1 pick. These are the things that happen. I know how little you think of the Titans, but these are the things that happen when a team has the number 1 overall pick. Like, we're going to continue to see this all offseason, whether it was the Titans or the Giants. I mean, I guarantee you.
It's exhausting. I don't know how Jacksonville's done this for so many years.
If the Giants had the number 1 pick, if the Browns had the number 1 pick, we'd be seeing all the same stuff.
615-737-1045 is the number. Darrington is up next.
My good people, first of all, Lucas, I need you to be on your job because there's a snippet on the commercial that y'all got where you said every time Buck says a lie, you're going to call him out and say, lie. Well, when he said Jerry Jones, if he could buy all his team, that he would go win a Super Bowl. Lie. Because Jerry Jones said it would be an honor and you should want to play for the Cowboys just because you're a Cowboy and everything should be incentivized. That's one right there.
That's a reasonable one.
Anyway, purpose of my call was because I know this could be just randomly, but Babs on 3HL, she said her husband had a dream. I'm not sure if you guys heard this. Well, he said that the Titans kept constantly trading their number 1 pick back like 6 spots, ascertaining each team's number 1 pick for next year and and with their trade swapping. I want to know, is that even a possibility with everybody out here putting out lives and being that Mike Bergans, he said that he threw out some non-official information like that before. So I just want to know if something like that would be possible this year. Y'all guys have a good weekend.
Thanks for the call. You too. Why is Travis dreaming about the Titans draft pick?
He's a fan.
Do you
also,
dream?
Shout out Darrington. 1 minute on the dot.
Yeah, very good.
He knows the rules. Do the two of you are Titans fans? Do you often dream about the Titans draft pick?
I have yet to have a dream about the draft pick, but with how much we're talking about
do your sports teams make an appearance in your dreams? I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm sure
the Vols are very recurring characters in dreams.
Yeah, but that's trauma. That's different. That's not like the idea of the draft pick. That's like, those are nightmares. Those aren't dreams.
No, I have dreams of the Vols winning national championships.
Have you actually?
Oh, yeah.
Then he woke up.
This was during like the Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt era.
Oh, yeah. So you're really dreaming, huh?
Pretty terrible morning.
Yeah, the morning sucked.
I just can't imagine Travis Harder waking up in a cold sweat screaming out things about the Titans trading back.
There's been a trade. What? Are you okay?
No, it's not like Dawn would be comforting in that moment. Dawn would swing at him and then go back to bed. I mean, is it possible that they trade back multiple times? Yeah, you can maneuver. Again, you have leverage.
Yep.
You control the draft. In essence, because you are the first person on the clock. You are up next. I mean, I know free agency comes next, but you're up next. So, yeah, there's any number of possibilities. Think about Robinson in 2016. What did he do? He traded out of the number 1 draft pick, right?
Yeah.
Can't remember how far back he traded, but then he traded back up to get Conklin at 8. So you can get leverage by getting additional draft capital with that number 1 overall draft pick. Honestly, the first
What did
version
they
J-Rob,
trade for that first overall
I feel
pick?
like he went back to like 13 in the first round, and that's when they picked up a bunch of those second round picks because the deal was done before the draft to move out of the number 1 slot. Like the Titans didn't do that deal on draft night.
Right.
But I can't remember exactly where they traded back to initially before trading back up to get Conklin at 8.
The Rams, it happened on April 14th. Right, it happened before the draft.
Yeah.
The Rams sent their first round pick, 2 second round picks, a third, a 2017 first, and a 2017 third in exchange for the number 1 pick, a 4th, and a 6th.
J-Rob 2016 is the model on how to do this.
But where did the Rams trade up from? What pick did they have?
It was somewhere in the teens. I want to say it was like 13 or 16 or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's been a long time ago. We'll take more of your phone calls coming up next, and also hear from Brian Callahan in an interview with A to Z Sports, why it didn't work with Will Levis. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Somebody needs to update that promo because we do know who the next Titans GM will be. Either way, what you do need to know is that the Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to help you where it relates to ED. If you're somebody who's dealt with ED, a lot of guys do. It's natural. It happens. Your body changes as you age, and you want to make sure that you have the right people and the right protocols in place to be able to deal with that. Because if you've been taking pills, sometimes the pills stop working. And there can be a lot of misconceptions about how to get ED treatment. Do not go through things like irreversible surgery to treat ED before you've talked to the experts at the Tennessee Men's Clinic, because they specialize in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do, and it makes them the experts in the field. They have access to multiple protocols and options to treat your ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. So don't trust your health to an online pharmacy and don't feel like you're out of options. We want you to understand all of the options available where it relates to ED treatment. The Tennessee Men's Clinic has treatments for everything from low testosterone, ED, treatments that increase size, stamina, and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. This AC/DC, right?
He's not serious, Jackson. It's okay.
I could have been. You don't know. This one I know.
Put it past you.
I've done enough games at what is Acrisure Stadium?
Mm-hmm.
Done enough games.
Oh yeah,
at Acrisure Stadium to be familiar with Renegade for certain.
The Houston Texans are firing offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick.
That is the news, and their offensive line coach is out as well. Life comes at you fast in the NFL. This man went from interviewing for head coaching openings, in fact, interviewed with this team for a head coaching opening, to canned. Now, he didn't do a good enough job. Texans fans are happy about this, it would seem, based on just the comments, the replies to Adam Schefter's tweet. I think fan bases, after a while, just want blood. What are you smiling back there about?
Look at your Twitter.
What happened?
Look at what you just tweeted.
What? What's going on?
Life comes at you since.
Life comes at you since.
And we're supposed to believe that Lucas Panzica runs your Twitter and makes all these mistakes.
Life comes at you since. S-E-N-S-E.
That wouldn't be an autocorrect thing. I don't know how
Buck,
fast.
would you please lead an Eagles chant for us? I just want to check something here.
Oh, like you idiots have never misspelled a tweet before. He literally does it for my account twice a week.
There you go.
There we go. The deflecting and the lying again.
It's embarrassing. Yeah. I'm embarrassed for you.
Lies.
The timing.
Yeah, thank you.
The timing of that could not be better. Either way, life does come at you since or fast. Either way, Bobby Slowick is out. Quarterbacks with potential, quarterbacks who you've seen succeed at a reasonably high rate. How much of this is because C.J. Stroud regressed?
A lot of it.
I would say that's fair. How much of C.J. Stroud's regression is because the offensive line regressed?
I would say a good portion of it.
Yeah.
And I'm so fascinated to apply this conversation to Jaden Daniels next year. Especially if Cliff Kingsbury is no longer around. I haven't seen him really mention
future Titans head coach Cliff Kingsbury.
I haven't seen him mention. Has he's interviewed, right, at a couple of jobs,
no.
or has he not?
I can't remember who I was talking to.
It seems like he's staying in Washington.
Well, it may have been Diana that I was texting this about, because I said I would like the Titans to consider Cliff Kingsbury for head coach because, I wanted them to clean house.
Talking about this year.
Yeah.
To replace Brian Callahan.
Yeah. Because I had brought it up in Jacksonville in the press box with Suss and Tehran kind of looked at me sideways.
I don't know who this is in the F&M Big Chat using the Zone account. The Sense and the Furious is my favorite movie franchise.
That's for sure, Bert.
What about the Sense Times at Ridgemont High?
That's good, too.
What's that movie? Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
I prefer my pitchers to have a great sense ball.
Pitchers? I thought he spelled pictures. My point being, I was texting Diana about this because I was like, hey, how real is Cliff's head coaching candidacy anywhere? And she said it was her understanding that he wants that it's kind of like Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson wanted the best possible situation. Ben Johnson stayed at a certain place until he got the best possible situation. And then he ultimately ended up picking. And it's not, by the way, Bears are not a well-run franchise in basically the last 20 years of their existence. That Ben Johnson picked the Chicago Bears is not inconsequential to me. People with options, that Mike, kind of like here, Mike Borgonzi picking the Titans is not inconsequential to me for a variety of different reasons about what we thought this job was versus what this job is to him, about why it made the most sense for him to take a job like this if he's got options. People with options.
You were surprised Ben Johnson picked the Bears?
Yes.
You were surprised Ben Johnson chose to work with Caleb Williams?
I'm surprised Ben Johnson chose to work for the Bears. Caleb Williams is, of course, a huge part of that. I am surprised that anybody... Have you seen the Bears? When is the last time the Bears have been celebrated for a coaching hire? They have made
when Matt Nagy won Coach of the Year, but that faded fast.
That faded very quickly, and then Matt Nagy was public enemy number one. And Matt Nagy has not even, has he even been back in the head coaching cycle? Maybe he's content to be a coordinator.
Yeah, and not really. I think he's just settled in at Kansas City.
You know what I'm saying? So, but basically, what Diana told me, and we were just going back and forth over this over text, is Cliff wants the best possible scenario. So, the Saints right now are open. Cliff Kingsbury going to want the Saints job?
Yeah, nothing appealing about that right now.
Like, are the Raiders the best possible scenario? Who was the best possible coach? What was the best coaching job that was open this year?
The best head coaching job?
Bears, Saints, Raiders, Jags.
Right, well, that's the thing about these jobs. Oftentimes,
Jets.
It's a bad situation because they fired the coach, because
but you can
they were
still
bad.
Because I thought it was the Jets sans quarterback, right? Quarterback is a problem there, but the Jets have the most talented roster.
But volatile owner hanging above everything. I get what you're saying, but I will tend to, especially for an offensive-minded coach, I will tend to lean towards quarterback, what's in place. And some coaches prefer the blank slate. But I'm not shocked that Ben Johnson chose to work with one of the more talented prospects in the NFL draft that we've seen in recent years, who did not play that bad last year. He's overshadowed by Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has Cliff Kingsbury. Caleb Williams had his offensive coordinator and head coach fired midseason.
Caleb Williams has not displayed the kind of, and listen, few quarterbacks display the kind of aptitude that Jaden Daniels has displayed in his first year. Is Jaden Daniels bothered by the moment?
Not even a little bit.
Is Caleb Williams? And I know that
I don't have a determination on that
yet. We have a pretty glaring example of him being put in a moment where he was clearly flustered, a couple of them. He's very emotive. Lucas, you don't have a representative sample size of Caleb Williams throwing his hands up, looking like the most miserable quarterback of the 32 starting quarterbacks out there?
He had his struggles as a rookie quarterback.
Hell, that timeout situation. But I'm talking about like the demeanor, the reason, one of many reasons why Jaden Daniels is being praised today is because he's got the Joe Burrow kind of stone face. Yes. I am neither happy nor sad. I'm just here and I'm trying to win football games and I'm trying to execute. I don't know if there was a more outwardly expressive quarterback in football last year than Caleb Williams.
Sure. You can have the belief that Caleb Williams is not going to be a good quarterback. I'm not ready to go there with Ben Johnson as his head coach.
That is not my belief. I believe that Caleb Williams, a completely talented prospect, went to a bad organization, and I don't know how long it's going to take Ben Johnson to reverse that course because they're not the same player. Jaden Daniels is the better player.
Right now,
Caleb Williams makes more wow throws or whatever. He has more spectacular moments. Maybe I shouldn't say that. He has had more of the wow. I don't even want to position it that way. Caleb Williams has had wow moments where he makes a throw off platform or on the move or something like that. He displays the arm talent that made him the number one overall pick, and you say, oh my God, that player is going to be great. And then he does things like the timeout situation that also Eberflus botched, but Caleb Williams is also welcome to kind of have some poise in that moment to understand the situation, the game situation, and to call the timeout in that specific instance as well. Like these various examples that we're talking about that distinguish Jaden Daniels, who is above the rest of them, and then everybody else who's trying to figure it out. Yeah, Caleb Williams is a talented player, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work seamlessly. It's going to give you the best opportunity to succeed. I get your point there if you're an offensive-minded head coach.
I still have a lot of belief in Williams. I think he had a better rookie year than most quarterbacks do in his position. Jaden Daniels is the anomaly. C.J. Stroud is an anomaly. And when you look at what went wrong for the Bears last year, I don't think you got to go quite a few notches down the list before saying it didn't work because of Caleb Williams.
No, that's not what I'm saying
with
at
the
all.
Titans
I'm saying
this year,
Caleb Williams didn't work because of Matt Eberflus and his offensive line.
Shane Waldron is a part of that. Brian Callahan talked this week about why it didn't work with Will Levis.
Yeah, so he did an interview with A to Z Sports. It's up on their YouTube page right now. And, of course, Levis is one of the reasons that this season did not go well. And Brian Callahan was asked specifically on why it didn't work with Will.
No, I think it's one of those things that you just, Will's in a new system, a new way of doing things. A lot of, everything about Will in the offseason portion was encouraging in the sense that he was getting a new system down, handling the verbiage, the play calls, the process, the huddle. All that was good. you see Will's physical talent. You know, he's big and strong and tough. He can throw the ball. And, you know, I thought he had a pretty strong training camp. And I think when you watch how he started the Chicago game, that's what I saw. That's what I thought we were capable of being. And even in the Jets game, he did some good things as we moved the ball down the field and against a good defense, especially at that time. I mean, they were damn good early in the season when they were healthy. And we moved the ball
in the league when they fired Saleh, which changed quickly.
Yeah, and that's who they were. That's who they were the last couple of years. I mean, it's a tough defense, and Chicago was a good defense. So we played two good defenses early, and there was some things about how he operated that was encouraging. And then, you know, I think the offensive line play affected him. You know, we weren't good enough up front, so ton of hits, takes a ton of sacks, and then it sort of spirals from there. And ultimately, when you win 3 games, you know, nothing was good enough, but certainly we weren't good enough at the quarterback spot over the course of the season to be in position to win more games than 3.
It's a completely fair assessment of what happened with Will and how it went down. And again, if you cut the Titans' turnovers in half, how much better of a football team are they? If they're not leading the league in giveaways, 34 giveaways.
You're talking about multiple
tied with
games
the Browns
going the other direction.
Right. You're talking, I mean, directly where you can attribute one turnover or multiple turnovers to Will Levis losing a game. Like quarterback win-loss record is a flawed way to evaluate the quarterbacks, but where you can directly see the one play, Chicago is the most visceral example of that, where the quarterback gave away the game, then that's a reasonable thing to think, all right, maybe even if they just regress to average or progress to average in this particular situation, then the Titans, you may be talking about, I don't know, I don't know how much better 5 wins makes you feel.
But I think even more interesting was his answer with Easton Freeze in that interview on A to Z Sports, which dropped this morning, by the way. His answer about trying to make Will Levis fit into what he wanted to do on offense, which is exactly what you and I were talking about yesterday.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, it's my job to find a way to fit that the right way.
Sure.
You know? And we did things that I tried to play as many strengths as Will had, and some of that's the deep play action, 3-level throws, you know, things where you got, you know, but the problem with that is now you got to hold the ball, you know, and so we were in a little bit of a juxtaposition of trying to maintain some of those deep down the field throws, the play action where you got time to sort of see things develop versus having to get the ball out, you know, and having to play a style of offense that relies on timing because we don't have a lot of time. And so how do we best get the ball out of our hands? And that's probably not, you know, what Will's strengths are. Will's, you know, not a precision timing passer at this point, you know, and he's a young player. Those are the things you develop over time. But that's where we were in a bit of a pickle, is that we're trying to protect the line and trying to make sure we get the ball out so we don't take negative plays. And you're mixing that with what Will does well, which is throw the ball down the field. And, you know, it takes time to get down the field. You have to protect to get down the field. And I thought we did at times a really nice job. And then at other times it was not nearly good enough. And that to me is the biggest difference, is that we were trying to deal with a couple of different issues. Again, not just Will in terms of what he does and what he does well, but we were sort of caught in between. And I think that did Will a bit of a disservice too, to not be able to play to his strengths. So again, not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, if you will. It was more trying to manage where our deficiencies were offensively and try to best put us in position to have success. And is that necessarily Will's strengths at this moment? No, Will's strengths is being able to get down the field and throw balls deep and deep sail routes and post routes and comebacks and things like that. And we had to manage both of those things at the same time, which you know, I think was challenging both for us offensively and for Will.
But they did it worse than Tim Kelly did, because Tim Kelly was up against the same kind of stuff.
So when I listened to that,
because it
struck me. No, look, it struck me. What he described as Will Levis's strengths, doesn't that sound so much more conducive to a run-first, play-action offense?
Yes.
Like the Titans had under Mike Vrabel?
Where Derrick Henry is an impossible thing to ignore.
Mm-hmm. What was Will Levis' finest moment as a Titan?
Oh, Atlanta?
Yeah. Under Mike Vrabel with Tim Kelly. So That kind of struck me in terms of, and Brian Callahan, like you said, on the front end. It's on him to put Levis in a better position to succeed.
They did not do as good a job as the previous coaching staff did. And I'm not defending Will Levis, but I want people to understand that it is not quite equal parts blame that need to be divvied out between the quarterback that had Levis had 18 total turnovers this year, an abhorrent amount, egregious, unacceptable by any stretch of the imagination. He knows that, you know that, I know that, we all know that, right? But also a coaching staff that did not do a good enough job, and the player got worse, even though there are some things that Brian Callahan has described where they helped Levis improve, but they helped him improve in areas where he had a lot more work to do. And to hear Brian Callahan talk about it makes me think that those things were impossible for him to get accomplished even in this year. Based on the barometer that Brian Callahan is setting for quarterback improvement versus the rate of development that is required for Levis in a couple of these different areas.
The player got worse when more was put on his plate for a quarterback to run the offense in a Brian Callahan offense, as opposed to the offense Will Levis was drafted into, which was more conducive to his strengths. But when you get a quarterback that can run the offense the way Callahan wants it run, the ceiling of that offense is far higher than the ceiling of an offense that the Titans had previously, especially when Derrick Henry is not your running back. So I think that's the point of bringing in a Brian Callahan. They tried it with Levis. It didn't work. We did see some of that ball progression stuff. Titans were moving up and down the field against the I just knocked my mic over.
What is wrong with you? Why are you wiping your mouth?
Titans were moving the ball up and down the field against the Bears and against the Jets. Were they not? I mean, we can go look at the total yardage in that game.
No, the first.
So Will Levis
only feel good from this season was the first half of that Bears game, and then they didn't feel good again until the number 1 overall pick.
He was kind of doing those things in those games, and then the nuclear moments happened. Right, and then things spiraled from there.
Am I too harsh in describing him as a head case based on what happened this year?
Yeah, we're talking about the new GM, talking about neck up.
Rewiring of the brain.
Yeah.
He's even
Those are
talking
his
about
words.
it. Like, head case feels strong. It feels like a personal attack, and I don't mean it as a personal criticism, but I do mean it as a professional criticism. He was not able to handle a lot of these moments. He made, in several moments, several instances, decisions that may have been the worst possible decisions that he could have made. I'm not absolving him. I'm just saying the failure was two parts here, on the coach and on the quarterback. The quarterback has more blame. The quarterback was drafted for a different system. Now they'll get the opportunity to move on from the quarterback in some form or fashion, whether he's on the roster or not, and try and do this again. And we will get definitively, a more experienced Brian Callahan, which is not inconsequential here, and a more reasonable fit for a coach who had a quarterback situation that was oil to his water.
Right.
It didn't mix. They tried it. They tried a handful of things. It didn't mix.
Yeah. Exactly.
And both parties can hold some level of blame for that. That's the only thing that I'm trying to...
That record still falls under Brian Callahan. He went 3-14 in year one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Levis gets criticism. The criticism is deserved. The sheer volume of it's just Will Levis's fault is nonsense. Even though there's a lot that's his fault.
My opinion is this marriage, the Titans were never going to be a successful team with Will Levis as their quarterback and Brian Callahan as their head coach.
How many failed marriages are we going to talk about with this organization? Whether it's GM and head coach and quarterback. Like, how many are we going to go through? What is the divorce rate now for the Titans at this point?
75%.
Higher than league average.
That was, by nature, a square peg, round hole matchup. And it took a terrible season for us to figure that out. It did. So Brian Callahan deserves an opportunity to get his quarterback in here and show us that proof of concept that he wasn't able to with Levis because it just was never a fit.
We've got phone calls. We'll get the last call for them coming up next. Update some polls. Get you out of here on a Friday. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Start the new year off right with a new financial plan. How do you get that new financial plan started? Well, I'm here to tell you, because you've definitely asked yourself, will you have enough money when you retire, or when should you start to draw from Social Security? If these questions are keeping you up at night, let me introduce you to the team that's there to keep you on the right track and guide you through it. That's Trajan Wealth, Trajan Wealth. Trajan Wealth is not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today, 615-270-5000, 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up. Last call for phone calls. You got Shrine Bowl over the weekend. I know Jim Wyatt's down there. I think Tehran is also there. Shedeur Sanders participating. Titans have a sizable contingent there to watch. They have one of the coaches working with Shedeur as a part of the East West teams. Is Parker McCollum the Titans' assistant wide receivers coach that's operating as the quarterbacks coach? Is he on Shane Bowen's squad? Because Shane Bowen is coaching, I think, the West team in the East-West Shrine Bowl this weekend.
If Shane Bowen is coaching the West team. So, yes, McCollum will be under him, working with Shedeur Sanders.
So there will certainly be some insights to come out of that. Senior Bowl is next week, so we'll look forward to that as well. Last call for phone calls, like I said.
High school basketball tonight on my TV 30. I'll be on the call with Drew Maddox, Wilson Central hosting Smyrna. So we'll be on at 7:30. Hope you all will join us.
You can. You said which two schools?
Wilson Central hosting Smyrna in a District 7 matchup.
Okay, fun stuff. How do I pronounce this name, Jackson?
Anduin.
All right, Anduin is up next.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I love this show. That is the Lucas Panzica show.
As one does.
So interesting draft scenario. The Titans and Giants. The Giants get the Titans over number 1 overall pick and a 4th-round pick. The Titans then get, obviously, the 3rd pick and their 2nd and a 3rd. I would love to hear what you guys would think of that. And probably Hunter or Abdul Carter would still be on the board in that scenario. Love to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I'm down with picks and Abdul Carter. That's cool.
Yeah, that would put you in the best position to get the best available talent that's not a quarterback if you don't feel like you need to take a quarterback.
The most talented player in the draft. I mean,
Abdul Carter.
You could go back and forth at what he's going to be as a pro player. Like, Travis Hunter played 130 snaps, averaged 130 snaps as a college football player. It's not going to happen in the pros. He's neither the best wide receiver or best corner, but he is a very unique talent. The case could be made for Travis Hunter. Certainly, I wouldn't argue against him because anybody who's capable of doing that is going to be capable of doing at least something.
Just a playmaker
at a high level. You know, he is an impact player at some position.
Oh yeah.
Abdul Carter, though, is probably going to be talked about as the best player in this draft.
He stepped into the position that a lot of people thought James Pierce would be in. Pierce had a nice year.
Probably going to end up being a second rounder.
Yeah, the final product just wasn't there as much for Pierce in terms of the sacks. The pressure numbers were high, but Abdul Carter took a massive leap this year.
To his credit. Tim is next.
Yeah, Buck, thanks for having me on your show.
Sure.
Question. Well, I think the Titans are going to trade out of the number 1 pick and go for long-term thinking. With the new stadium coming up in a couple years, what do you think about building draft capital and going for Arch Manning and bringing Arch Manning to Tennessee? Because we know Amy loves Texas players.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
There's an assumption that Arch Manning is going to be the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft.
Can we not do that?
Well, we're going to do that. It's just, it's kind of how this stuff goes. I'm with you, but I would caution people against assuming that Arch Manning is going to declare early.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Like, what is to say that he's coming out definitively?
Mm-hmm. Nothing about
doesn't
how
that
Arch
kind
Manning
of work antithetical to what the Manning family's process has been for all this stuff?
Right. We're talking about a guy who did not go about his recruitment like any other modern recruitment.
I'm not mad at you, Tim, but I don't want to talk about the 2026 or, frankly, 2027 draft when the 2025 is still ahead of us. Polls, please.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What is the most positive story you've seen in sports this week? Tyler submits Tennessee women's basketball coach Kim Caldwell having her baby. She was not able to travel with the team to Austin against Texas last night.
I watched the end of that game. It was a close game. I thought they were going to be able to pull it off.
They came up short, but congratulations to Coach Caldwell, her husband Justin. They are the proud parents of a new son, Connor Scott Caldwell. So that was really, really cool. Who you got? Chiefs or Bills? 66.7% are going Bills.
Why do you think that is? When all we've known
Allen is due.
Chiefs domination. Yeah, but I need better reason than Allen is due.
No, I know. I'm going Chiefs until they say otherwise.
Yeah, that's just kind of my feeling on it. Like, because I also am one of these people, like, surely at some point Josh Allen is going to get one. But I don't know. I mean, I thought that all season long. Like, surely to God, somebody. And Josh Allen did get them in the regular season. But until I see him physically lose and not be in the playoffs anymore, again, 7 consecutive AFC championship games for a reason. They're excellent.
Yeah. Who you got, Commanders or Eagles? 58% say the Commanders. Jalen Hurts banged up. So he was limited in the Eagles walkthrough yesterday with the knee. He's definitely not going to be 100%. Says he's on track to play. Expect him to play.
They haven't needed the passing game.
No. So that's is it that simple? Can the Commanders even contain Saquon Barkley?
No, they're not a strong. Again, I mean, they have not been, to this point, a good run defense, a good rush defense. They are not a very, as Cosell pointed out on the preview for Conference Championship Weekend, they're not a very gap-sound defense, which, of course, against a guy like Saquon Barkley is going to cause you all kind of fits. You don't want... How old is Bobby Wagner? You called me 38 today. That hurt my feelings. Bobby Wagner's
I know.
at least...
He called you younger than you really are. You're really 58.
He's 34.
At heart, I'm 75, but, it is what it is.
But you don't know who Sticks is, so that just doesn't add up.
Bobby Wagner is only 34?
He's 34. He'll
Impossible.
be 35 this summer.
I refuse to believe that Bobby Wagner is 3 years older than me.
By the way, if the Eagles win, Nick Sirianni would be the third head coach in NFL history to reach 2 Super Bowls in his first 4 seasons. He would join Joe Gibbs and Mike Tomlin. Pretty good company.
And they'll still try to fire him as soon as he loses to
for sure.
the Cowboys next year or something.
Like week 3, they're 2-0. They get their first loss. Yeah,
for sure.
I
love Eagles fans.
I think we get an Eagles-Chiefs rematch.
I would be disappointed by that.
I wouldn't. Who cares? If it's a good game, it's a good game.
I don't want banged up, but I don't think it's going to be a good game. I think the Chiefs would just kind of handle it and move on with their day.
I don't know. Nobody's really handled Saquon and moved on with their day this season.
Yeah, they haven't played head-to-head with Saquon on the roster, and the Chiefs' defense is a better defense than the one that he is getting ready to face in this round. I'd probably take the Eagles.
Commanders, Eagles at 2 o'clock. Bills, Chiefs at 5:30. Westwood One coverage begins at 1 here on The Zone. Do you still believe Will Levis can be a good NFL quarterback? 64.8% of the audience say no.
What's good? Like if he has a 8-year NFL career as a backup quarterback, that's good to me.
Okay, maybe we should have said starting quarterback, but that's what we mean. A good starting quarterback in the NFL.
I am inclined to think no.
AIM says, I didn't think Malik could be either, yet now Malik is a backup quarterback, but played pretty well this year. TX Buckeye says he never believed he would be a good one in the first place.
Like Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. Will Levis proved
it's like
a lot
Bob
of
Kraft. Oh, I'm so sorry I was right. I'm so sorry, Will Levis, that I was right about
but
you.
then I was bought in, right? I wrote the guy.
No, you lied. You lied.
I was bought in this past year.
Isn't that a thing we're doing? We're just going to call out when people are lying? Jackson.
Lie! You think that was a lie?
Lie.
I've never lied a day in my life.
Lie.
Lie.
You just lied again.
Those are the polls.
That's the show.
Go Eggsless.
Have a great weekend. Talk to you on Monday morning, 10 a.m. We'll see who's in the Super Bowl, see what the Titans do, or see what the reaction is out of the Shrine Bowl, and get you ready for the Senior Bowl.